Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This is not another edition of Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies. I was just about to say that for some weird reason. That's videos I used to make on my other channel, which I have to attend to at some point. So I want to talk about some of the differences when you get old. And for people who are my age or getting to be my age or older than me, you'll appreciate this because, you've experienced it. And if you're younger, it's something to think about because I didn't think about when I was younger. And it sneaks up on you. Like it doesn't happen like one day you're young and one day you're old. Like it's just like anything else. When you're growing up as a kid, I mean, you have growth spurts and, your brain, the way it functions changes, your body changes, and you have significant changes and milestones. And you have all these significant milestones the first 20 years of your life, and really the first, 16, 17 for most people. Like I had a growth spurt when I was 18, 19, and I probably didn't stop growing until I was like 20, 21. But for most people, in most of your initial first 5 years is when you go through the most transformation, the first 7 years, certainly. And then it's, puberty and then adulthood. And those are like two things. And, those things can be stretched out a bit, right? And you have these developmental milestones. And so then for the next 60 years of your life, if you live to 80, there's just this gradual decline, right? You peak maybe in your 20s, I mean your early 20s, whatever it is. And then your body, as you get into your 30s, it's no longer functioning as well as it had before. Like if you're an athlete, your experience and your muscle memory and your mental understanding of the sport is much better. But you can see your body declining in terms of your recovery period, in terms of like what used to be able to do easily now is more of a struggle. You see that you're not as fast, you can't jump as high. There's these aspects to your physical body. It doesn't work the same way, and you need to put more effort into stretching and these things, right? And then at some point you stop exercising like that, and now just walking, you get in your 40s, 50s, 60s, just walking, and like that's considered exercise, right? Like these things, right? Now, I'm trying to regain some of this stuff, and I talked about this in my video on my on the other channel about the heart, right? Because I'm trying to, you can make your heart young again according to this one video I watched, which may or may not be true through some sort of, slow levels of raising your pulse rate and these things through, exercise, but not like, I used to do when I used to play sports, right? And so here's an indicator of this, something that comes back around, right? So I grew up in Connecticut, which was really cold. And I had one of those, they had these jackets back then where they had like fur on the collars and it was like nylon and it had padding in it and all the kids wore it. And you could make your hood really tight and you saw through this little hole like an Eskimo, kind of an Eskimo jacket. I'm not sure if Eskimo is the appropriate term. Inuit, is that the thing? I don't know. And the you pull this hole, and you just see through this hole. You had to turn your whole head like Joe Biden does when you're talking to somebody. And we used to all walk to school with these jackets on, and like a little viewing porthole for, whatever in the middle of the winter. And I had a blizzard where our power lines were down, and I was walking down this road, and there was these live wires and shit. Like I was a little kid. This stuff's just laying on the ground. I missed school for like a week because there's no electricity. But there was these winter moments. It was probably the worst place I lived for winter. I have been in other places, but probably the coldest place I lived was New England. It was cold all the time, shitty. People are kind of miserable and grumpy and, kind of hostile. It's one of the worst places in America to live. There's like old money and tradition, all that shit up there, right? And, I always ran hot. Like I was someone who, I could go outside with shorts when it was 50 degrees, even 40 degrees. The cold didn't bother me when I was playing sports and things because my body temperature was up there. And I wasn't bothered by heat either. I was a summer person. I could play sports in pretty, high degree weather. I have some Italian blood, Sicilian blood in me. I have some of that, genetic makeup where I'm not bothered. I wasn't bothered by the extreme cold or the extreme heat. I was pretty well regulated and body temperature wasn't a thing, right? And as the years have gone by, the winters just get harder and harder for me. The light deprivation, it's hard to go out in the cold. I take my dogs out. I just went out with my dogs now. I got on the tractor. We have a tractor, and we have a driveway they had to plow and get some of the snow off of it. And we have these paths that I've created, and they're not cemented, they're not paved. And so I had to, keep the plow at a certain angle. I've learned to use the bucket, the scoop, and the plow. It's not meant for snow, but we don't have, we had 4 or 5 inches. I got it done. It was light, and I did that yesterday. And just going up and down on the driveway with the tractor tire pretty much would condense the snow enough. But then, of course, if it gets cold, if it gets warm, and then it gets cold again, it freezes up, and that's a whole other issue, right? But anyways, I did that, and we have these. We have a pond that I have to refill. The fish were running out of water. I showed a, waterfall of the thing, right? A video of we have a waterfall. It has like a stream that the chickens drink out of. And then we have the chicken water inside the chicken house because the chickens just didn't want to come out. We have older chickens now, and they wanted no part of the snow, right? And so what I learned years ago, we have these types of farm pumps, where there's a handle on it. And if you live in a place where there's some levels of the ground freezing, there's this frost zone. I forget what it is, right? You dig down below where your ground freezes, depending on where you live, right? It's 6 inches where it's like southern place, or 0, and some of these, the higher numbers like zone 7, zone 8, zone 9, these things. And then you got to dig down farther because the ground freezes more deeply. Of course, if you ever watch the show like that show Gold Rush, or these places where they're up in the Yukon and they have permafrost and all these things, right? It never thaws at a certain level, right? So anyways, it got really cold here in November, then warmed up. I mean, significant. It was up to like almost 55, 60. And then it was warm for a while, and then it got cold again. Like, it's getting really cold now after the snow, and then we have the snow on the ground. Doesn't look like it's going to melt anytime soon, right? And my dogs, like, I had to clear these paths. My dog Buddy has got, thinner hair, thinner fur, and he gets cold. And so it's like a whole thing. But anyways, I've had to get more balaclavas. So I've got 2 balaclavas I wear, like a very thin nylon one, and then like a knit hat, like a Carhartt hat. And these I need the 2 hats, right? And then I have a snowsuit, and I have a dicky like turtleneck thing, because I don't like turtlenecks. So other than when I go outside in the cold, I don't like them. Like, and it's whatever. And so I got all this stuff that I put on, and now I got these big farm boots and whatever. And I'm going out there, and I was showing my son how to do the pond, in case I needed him to do it. And he's got this thing where he's in his 20s, and he's trying to condition his body so he's not wearing any coat and shit in the winter. He's trying to get used to the cold. He's done these kind of things before, like a young person thing. And I'm sitting there talking to him with my double hats. And my dad, I remember my dad when he got, in his 50s, going outside with these 2 double hats on. They look much worse than what I got, but still. And I remember thinking, like, what a loser, And, so, and here I am. Like, these things always come back around, right? But when people think about getting old, the first thing they think about is, like, wrinkles, which when you get old, it's, like, to me, the least of your problems. It's your internal organs don't function as well, and your body is a lot stiffer, and, you don't sleep as well. Your body's not making as much melatonin, whatever it is. You're not getting as good exercise. You don't digest your food as well. And there's just, you're going to have chronic illnesses and aches and pains and these things. And what people don't think about is that you don't deal with temperature as well. That's why all these old people retire down to Florida and these places, because it's just too freaking cold, right? I mean, it's just like the winters they just take a lot out of you. Your body can't generate the heat it used to, and it doesn't take the shock of these things. Noises sound louder, and just it's harder to, like, that's why older people are like, they don't like, the new kids' music and all that stuff. Everything's just harder. Like, it's more difficult. Like, life is just harder because you just can't function as well. You don't see as well. You don't hear as well. You don't like all these things, right? And it's just across the board. And it happens over a period of time. And That's why they say the youth is wasted on the young, because you don't appreciate it. You don't appreciate what you have going for you, and like you're just too young and stupid to realize it, and you just don't have the experience. And so by the time you get the experience, your body's crapping out. And so that's kind of one of the jokes. That's why I've often said, I totally believe that people were designed to live much longer lives. It feels like there's just not enough time. And I've experienced that even as a younger person. Your time just flies by, and there's oftentimes you don't have enough time to fully appreciate a stage in your life or people in your life and these other things. Anyways, got a lot of things to get to. Things are turning. Mark Zuckerberg is getting rid of all this, a lot of the censorship shit, which you'll get into here. The Trump press conference and some of these other things. Things are loosening up for the time being. I mean, it can switch back at any time. Everyone should be aware of that. But let's get into the Mark Zuckerberg thing here. Okay. Greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm not sure if I'm going to do an introduction to this video. Today is Tuesday, January 7th. Going to get to a press conference with Trump's, some other stuff here. But let's start with Marky Z. It's happened. Like, they've reversed all their policies for now.
I want to talk about something important today, because it's time to get back.
Because usually I talk about bullshit. Unimportant bullshit. But today is important.
To our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political.
Okay, so we know what happened here. Joe Biden and his fucking team, like, if you want to say anything about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and how it's affected us, like how this has affected me personally, like what I do here as a job. I don't know how many policies around immigration and some of the other policies that have affected me, maybe you more. It depends on each person's situation, right? But this is something where it was a big fuck you to all of us who are in the truth community, because they censored social media specifically around truther stuff, right? Joe Biden threatened to pull title, whatever the fuck it was. There's a title, something or other. So there's this thing called Section 230, in which Joe Biden, the Section 230 means that social media platforms can't be sued for what their users post, right? And they have, some case billions of users, multi-million, millions of users who are posting things that could be considered, something that would be worthy of a lawsuit. And so these companies can't exist without that. And Biden threatened to pull it from them if they didn't censor things. The the thing with Hunter Biden, the articles with New York Post, that was censored by Facebook and Twitter, and then these other various other elements, stuff with RFK Jr. And so it's completely fucked. It was First Amendment violation, and it prevented us from, they rearranged their algorithms and their search engines. I hope YouTube follows suit, because it was completely fucked. And it hurt them on a business level, and it hurt us all in terms of being able to express ourselves and share information. And we know this could come around again. But it's less than likely, because the American people supporting Trump, and this was part of it, right? And like, he's aware of this, and this shows you how messed up Biden administration was in terms of First Amendment rights.
But there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US.
So the community notes are worthless, right? But, they're just like a way to cover their ass. The community notes are usually silly, but, they are what they are. Because most people who are on social media aren't looking for experts or the official story or mainstream bullshit, right? But that is, definitely an improvement.
After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
Boom. Zuckerberg, bringing it to the fact checkers.
So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas.
Wait, you mean it didn't work? It didn't make it more inclusive? Wait a minute. It's crazy that happened, right?
And it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms. Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action.
Okay, see, there's a point where I had a lot of truther friends who were, like, this was something they did on a regular basis, post shit on Facebook. Like, I had, I think, 5 or 6 people who had a lot of subscribers who, made friends with me because they watched my videos or they knew of me or whatever. And they used to post 8 to 10 things that were truther related every day. And some of the things were helpful for me to create content. So I used to go on Facebook. And then one of them said, I just got out of jail. I was like, fuck, what happened? I had to ask him because I didn't really know him. And then another one said, I just got out of jail. And then another person said, I just got out of jail. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't real jail. I go through Facebook and I was like, oh, it's Facebook jail, what they were calling Facebook jail, where they would get 30-day bans. And they just couldn't post anything anymore. I had a lot of heartfulness, Saj related friends, and they were people I didn't know. Many of them posted their posts in their native language if they were Indian. And when the heartfulness debacle happened, I got rid of most of those people. And so then the truthers disappeared, and I'm like, Facebook is basically worthless because, it's just everything. The groups that I knew were like just either wrecked or they couldn't post, truther stuff. And Facebook was tanking, right? I mean, this is like a business move on his part because the stuff with the truther stuff, there's so much censorship that Facebook became even lamer than it was before. And then the whole meta bullshit, right?
The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed, so we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive. Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas.
I haven't watched this yet. They're moving to Texas. Fuck California. We're moving it to Texas. Probably Austin, but still.
As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that
So their liberal bias in Europe is off the charts and silly.
can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it.
He looks excited.
It'll take time to get this right, and these are complex systems. They're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems, and getting back to our roots about giving people voice.
Boom. Okay, so like things have changed for the better temporarily.
I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
See, hopefully YouTube starts, things can change. We see it now. It's happened with Twitter. Actually knows it's working there. And, the kind of people that you want. I mean, people say that they don't want certain types of groups of people, older people, and, the demographics are always, they want the young people, but also people like having smart people. Maybe they cater, certain things to dumb people. Dumb people are maybe better customers in some ways, but smart people are always valued. And when you start pulling all this bullshit, because like I've been saying lately about my videos and my channel, and then all of this across the board, you don't have to watch. There's a plethora of content, and you can turn all of it off. But you can certainly choose what you watch. And so they should recommend things based on that, right? And if companies say they don't want to sponsor certain things, well, fuck those companies, right? I mean, they should out those companies and say, these companies are pushing for censorship, and they're saying that they want us to alter the algorithms. I mean, what happened with YouTube, which I said was completely fucked, is they know what you want, but they would give you something else and then tell you what you want is wrong. Like the arrogance of the fuckers, right? Like Google and YouTube to say what you want is wrong. We know what you want, but what you want is wrong. And so hopefully all this stuff opens back up, at least for some period of time, while we're watching the collapse and all these things. And then YouTube just started getting goofy about saying, like I couldn't cover things like war and get it monetized. Oh, it's too graphic for some people. Oh, so we can't post ads on that because it's disturbing. Like people are so weak they can't even watch shit on the fucking YouTube, right? Like you're not there, right? You're not watching people get blown to bits. Like there are people there at the war zone. There are people whose family members are getting, blown to bits and like all these things, and people can't even like watch it or understand, and not even watch the graphic nature of it, right? Not even the graphic nature. And so, but I can see YouTube's already loosening up on some of these things. Maybe they're not making an announcements like Zuckerberg, but bring the algorithm back to the way they were, where you are looking for something, they know what you're looking for, and they give it to you, especially when it's truther content, because that would change a lot for me and other people, and all of you who, when you search for something and they give you some from bullshit CNN and these mainstream media, legacy media as he calls it, who are pushing for this more than anybody else because they can't compete because they suck, right? So I noticed this comment right off the bat here. As soon as you mentioned Trump to help you administer your new ideas to fix your business, I am contemplating ending my account I have since 2007 as a sole woman proprietor I don't know why. Proprietary in the U.S. I don't know why I can't pronounce that today. In the U.S. for over 40 years, um, I'm appalled that you are depending on the new corrupt president to repair your business practices. Disappointed. Um, you know, again, you probably have all liberal friends. Like most people have, if you can't handle people's opinions that are conservative or truther opinions, then you probably don't have friends like that. And if you do, what fucking difference does it make? You know what they say or whatever they're going to say or whatever. Like, people should be able to say anything that's not dangerous and just express their opinions about everything, right? And, that's what the liberalism used to be about, like freedom. Liberalism, when you guys didn't have the power, when teenagers in the 60s and 70s were pushing for more free speech. I mean, it was all free speech and pushing back against the man and Christian right-wing conservative censorship. And now you guys have turned into what you hate. So fuck you guys, right? I mean, I can understand you guys, wanting your freedom of expression. But like the way that you guys treated anti-vaxxers, the way you guys treated, I mean, when they were saying we want to control our own bodies, and you were like, no, that only counts for abortion. What? Like the hypocrisy is off the charts, as one great man once said. Okay, so there's one more thing here, because I saw this at first with the Huffington Post this morning. It says Meta's gift to MAGA, and it says dumps fact checking, and they have a picture of Mark Zuckerberg. And so what I want to say about this is, this fact checking thing was a joke, and it was because there was fundamental dishonesty that the government is an authority about things that can never be really facts, right? And so all the things that are observations by people, all the things that you see, right? Like all the, criminal activity, all the crimes that are committed, all the juries that rule, all the judges, all the, bullshit, all that kind of stuff. All the things that people talk about in terms of historical events, firsthand account, right? Stories about other people. Your side of the story, and then somebody else's side of the story, he said, she said. All these things, right? It's never the truth. It's never the full truth. And so an example of this is, let's say you have somebody who is, like, as far as everybody can tell, without having firsthand experience, like Jeffrey Epstein was a pedo, right? Again, this is a show, so there's still levels of, he might not have even existed. He could be some, AI creation for all we know, right? But in terms of like somebody being a criminal, like a rapist or a pedophile or something like that, an abuser, the evidence is overwhelming that they did this. They were convicted of these things, or even a murder or something like that. Somebody hardcore criminal, and that is like kind of a fact, right? But there's still more to the story. And so we used to have these meetings when I first worked at my first treatment center with a therapist, like a counselor who worked with our unit. And they would go over the different kids and their issues and what they are working on in therapy. This is before I went back and got my master's degree in counseling, because at some point I was going to do this job that someone else was doing. And we had this woman, she was really good. And she was trying to, get the staff to understand, because these kids were miserable, rotten pieces of shit, right? They were horrible people. I mean, the kids, some of them were better than others, but they were really unlikable, and they had horrible behaviors, and the treatment center didn't make that better, and they came from horrible families. And their parents you would read about, and like their parents you would like look down on and even despise even more than the kids, because they created the circumstance, right? But there was a time where she came in and she read what a mom did to her kid. And she asked everyone, how do you feel about the mom? People were like, well, we hate her, whatever. She's a horrible person, these things. But then she read what the mom went through. And it was even worse than what the kid went through, what the mom's parents did to her. And then she read, a report of the parents' life before that. Like, it went back 3 generations. And so there's always more to the story, right? There's always more to, what's happened. Like, you look at a person who's committed a crime, and, the person's done a horrific thing, and you're like, yeah, that person's a horrible piece of shit, but, there's always more to the story, right? And then you bring in past lives and these other things, and, there's all kinds of ways of looking at it, right? So, there's things that you could say are fact that are, 2 plus 2 is 4. That's a fact. And things, maybe some of the scientific stuff can be proven factually, but there's always, things beyond it. There's spiritual truth. There's the divinity. And so, most things are subject to debate. And people think their opinions are so important, but your opinion is never a fact, right? And, that's one of the problems that we have now. I'm going to talk about critical thinking and, haters and things like this at the end of the video. And, I say things here like like I think I talk more like an authority. Like I come across more of an authority. Like I think I'm more of an authority than you. You guys think I think I'm more of an authority than I actually think, right? Because I know that there's deeper levels to all this stuff, right? And so what they've tried to do on the left is what happened to them when they were hippies. And I think I talk about that either last video or in this video. Well, when this boomer generation was hippies, they didn't have the power, and they were looking for freedom of speech. I talked about this with Mark Zuckerberg earlier in this video. And if there's something we can demonize the boomers for, it's they've become what they hate, right? Because now they're saying that they're the authority. And that's what was told to them when it was the right-wing conservative people, Christians, that they felt they were being suppressed by. And they were. They were being censored. And that's the other thing. Like, how long before the right wing starts censoring the left wing again? Like, this is the problem when people have such strong beliefs about their side. And just because the majority of people are on your side right now doesn't mean you're right. Like, it didn't mean it when Joe Biden was, the Trump haters and these people. It doesn't mean it now, right? So, the truth is whatever it is. And it's our job to seek it. It's our job to understand the truth at deeper levels as we get older. And most people never even tried that. They're not even attempting that. Even people in the truth community, even sometimes particularly in the truth community, because there's sort of this arrogance that we're the real knowers or whatever, right? But in terms of what I'm talking about here and the fact checking, whenever you suppress people and you try to say, we're the authority, we have the authoritative voice, it always ends up backfiring. It just creates a counterforce. And we all didn't agree with. You understand this when you say the authority is science, but scientists are corrupt, and they're run by big corporations, and they're willing to lie about the science, and they're willing to fudge data. Well, it's not an accurate source. When you say it's the Bible, and it says, well, the Bible's been changed and manipulated by people for the same things that for financial gain and power, the same way that science has manipulated their truth, right? The true science, they've manipulated the data to game it in a way that's for their, self-interest, selfish interest. The government's the arbiters of truth, right? The court system, whatever you think it is, right? Historians, right? It's none of those things. Like, no one, was going to buy into that. Like, these are all flawed institutions run by flawed people. And so this idea that you can censor people always comes out of weakness when you want to shut people down, right? It comes out of a sense of weakness because people being able to express themselves, it's better that they do that than they lie and they have to change what they believe because the system makes it. So they're suppressing their true intentions, their true, inner beliefs, and that always is bad for society as a whole. It's bad for everybody. When people are telling the truth, that's, even if it's a shitty truth, at least it's a step in the right direction. And that's why all this stuff has to come out, because of hundreds of years of suppressed truth of the people who can't speak about what they truly believe. Anyways, let's move on to the next thing here. Okay, so it says Aubry Plaza breaks her silence on her husband's sudden death. This is an unimaginable tragedy. Now, I don't know how much of what she does is a bit, but there's a lot of darkness in her. She's in a lot of dark things here. It turns out her husband committed suicide, which, given how she is, I mean, she's a death person, a very somber, some of it's dry humor. And I'm currently watching a movie with her and Jason Statham, which I'll talk about when I complete the movie tomorrow. There they are there. But she's very dark in her roles and, her interviews and things. I'll show you something from that. He died by suicide. But it's not unimaginable. Like if you said, Aubrey Plaza's husband committed suicide. I didn't even know she was married. You were like, well, yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's necessarily likely, but it doesn't come as a big surprise. So this is her. Audrey Plaza's Incantation Open 2019 Film Independent Spirit Awards.
Sisters, I gather you here today on the unholiest of afternoons, having accepted the invitation to conjure the spirit. The film Independent Spirit. Award spirits.
Okay, so, this is done in a joking way, but it is going to be a human sacrifice of a boy, right? The whole feminism thing was in full bloom. Hollywood pats itself on the back, has more award ceremonies and different types of awards than any other business in the world, I think, right? I mean, they just love to pat themselves on the back, these major, and they're often a ritualistic type of events. They're often rituals, right? There was so many weird shit that's gone down in these award shows. And they celebrate independent thought and independent expression and artistic expression. And yet they're big into censorship, right? Like all these liberal pieces of shit. So, but this was her thing here.
Spirit. Through this ancient ritual, we shall reject commercial cinema and pledge our souls to the pursuit of dangerous art.
Mondo Trasho, Lord of the Arts, Ghost of Barbara Loden.
Speak to me, Altman. Ashby, Antonioni.
Maya Darren.
Bring me the pain of Alexander Payne. Speak to me.
What the fuck, Aubry?
What?
I mean, you said there was gonna be a party, not some fucked up white girl shit.
Well, I'm sorry that you showed up early, okay? I'm doing my black magic ceremony to banish shitty sequels and lazy reboots.
Well, you know that me and you just did a Chucky movie together, so.
Silence! Begin the sacrifice. We
This is it here.
reject the Hollywood mainstream. Our future is with our sisters, in a bond sealed with blood.
That's cute, ladies. But this ain't no book club.
God damn, Ricci does not play around. Jesus.
Bring me the virgin sacrifice!
Here he is, sister.
Finn Wolfhard, the bastard child that burst from the loins of the Netflix algorithm. Prepare to die.
I told him I was giving him a ride to GameStop.
All the usual suspects, this dude, right?
Marcia, the dagger, please.
Forged from the gold of my Oscar.
Well, that's not real gold.
We twist the blade of mainstream success against itself, that we may reap our promised bounty. More limited theatrical releases and modest success.
No, wait. I'm not a virgin. Women love me. Like all women. I'm like a 4-quadrant cutie.
I can get another virgin.
Of course you can.
Ladies, I love all your work, by the way.
Thanks, that means a lot to me.
You know, it's a real honor to meet you guys. I've been watching you since I was a little kid, so.
Kill him! Spirit, come to me! Make me your host!
Now, she could have gone in any direction. She's hosting this show, right? This is before she gained popularity because of that White Lotus show or whatever. I mean, more popularity. But, like, her stuff's always dark and twisted, right? And, I mean, her husband.
I'm gonna go because I'm gonna get blamed for this shit.
Can I just say, it's so great to see you outside of work.
We're all so busy.
There was Satan there. Satan, or Calibus, I guess. It was Calibus.
Look upon me, for I am your host. Let the film Independence bear the one.
All right, so you know, you get the idea. And so she kind of sucks. Like, she's very dark and all these things, and a one-trick pony. Like, it's all, sort of. It's difficult to be somebody who is always saying things that are antisocial or of a horrific nature and trying to play it as a comedy bit. It sucks in this movie that I'm watching, so I want to talk about that. But I'm going to wait till the movie's over. But the stuff just doesn't work in many cases. And, it's just like with that guy, Ryan Reynolds. I had to look up Deadpool. As soon as I typed in Deadpool, the name comes to me. Like, I could see his face, but whatever. And, he seemed kind of funny at first, and then it was like, oh, it's just annoying. Like, the longer it goes, the bit goes. It's like, well, yeah, you got anything else? Like that, tongue-in-cheek bullshit isn't working, right? And just, I'm editing here, and just going through this, how weird is fucking Hollywood? Like, like, just how fucking weird is Hollywood? I mean, all of it, the whole thing, all of the politics and sport, it's just so fucking weird. So this is what I'm talking about here. They recommended this to me in the corner of the other one. Apparently she was hosting this again in 2020.
Get ready for the judgment day. And what do we have to be happy about, huh? What do we have? Look at all the disasters we have to deal with. Pollution in the air, trash in the ocean, cats in theaters. But that doesn't
It's Jesus, horrible, right?
mean we can't have some fun tonight, right? Some of you came all the way from other neighborhoods in Los Angeles for this. Thank you so much.
So funny. Yeah, great.
Goodness, Shia LaBeouf
So they have.
is here. Actually, he's been here all week. He was napping in the tent. We just built it around him. Willem Dafoe.
He's cracking up, Shia. Remember he had that thing, "You will not divide us." Remember? He started that thing where there's a camera and people are supposed to go up to him and say, "You will not divide us," and fights broke out. It was when Trump was first elected in 2016.
Oh my God, Willem Dafoe, I love you. And I just want to say I'm so glad that after years of looking like a 19th century lighthouse keeper, you finally got to play one. Dreams do come true, Willem. Oh my God, hit it! Sun is shining, come on, get happy. The Lord is waiting to take your hand. Shout hallelujah.
See, this is a low budget show that I didn't even know, award ceremony that it's not. I don't know where this is televised, and I've never heard of it before her thing. I mean, her other thing made this thing, at least in people in the truth community and Christians who saw a human sacrifice being performed in Hollywood, it made it pop a little bit, right? It brought it to people's attention who didn't know it existed. But when you talk about independent films, they're always shitty because they have low budgets. Like, occasionally somebody makes a great film, an independent film with not much money. But usually it's not the case. And, they have a few celebrities. They showed Laura Dern and Shia LaBeouf and that William Dafoe. But that was probably all the big names, and those aren't big names, right? And, it's low budget, right? But she's just like her whole vibe. Things jump the shark. Like, you're funny for a little bit, it works for a little bit, but then you're like a one-trick pony, and it's just, negativity and darkness and gloom and shit like that. And once in a while, a part like in something like that White Lotus show that was really horrific on the second season on HBO comes along. But let's move forward here. Woo!
Oh my God. Jennifer Lopez is here. Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez is here, you guys. You just performed at the Super Bowl last weekend. Amazing. What did you do last weekend, Mary Kay Place? Nothing, you lazy sack of shit. I'm just kidding. You're a
Wow.
national treasure. Nicolas Cage, you're a national treasure too. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. You were in National Treasure too. Herman? We're heading across the river.
Oh my God, it's horrible. Don't quit your day job. Anyways, her husband's dead, and and she says it's a shock. Okay, so I had finished this section of the video yesterday afternoon, but I watched the end of this show I want to talk about here. And I just did a voiceover, which I'll play in a second. Today is Wednesday, January 8th. And so let's get into this thing I did here. Okay, so I just did the long voiceover at the end of this. I'm going to add something to it in a second and put it there. But here I wanted to talk about this movie, Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre. I'm not sure. Ruse is, whatever Ruse is. It stars Jason Statham as Johnny Fortune or Orson Fortune or whatever the fuck his name was. Orson. And Audrey Plaza is in it. So it's a Guy Ritchie film. And I just watched a recent Guy Ritchie film. I kind of liked his films before. He's put out some, kind of funny, humorous action movies. He was married to Madonna, and I'm not going to hold that against him. But I think they had some children together. I'm not sure. But he makes these action films, and they're kind of tongue-in-cheek, and there's always some, humorous banter and these, cavalier characters and these fucking people, right? I had just watched this other movie that was from 2024 called The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. And these guys have gone rogue. They don't play by the fucking rules anymore, right? They're very formulaic. And, there's always banter. There's always, kind of jokes. And these guys, they're, whatever. It's like these action movies. And Guy Ritchie's films have gotten stale and like he's just a one-trick pony. Like it's just, the Ungentlemanly Warfare movie was better than this other thing, but they just don't, it just doesn't work anymore, at least for me. And Aubry Plaza is really uncomfortable in this movie. And Jason Statham, like I only get like 2 out of every 3 words or 2 out of every 3 sentences. I mean, he has this way of mumbling and you almost like need subtitles. He's got this, accent he has. He's a soft talker. And there's numerous stars in this thing that all are annoying in their own way. Hugh Grant and the guy who played, the hero in Princess Bride, and just all these other people. And, but the worst part is Aubry Plaza. She does banter with Jason Statham, and they have no chemistry. And I don't know if they were supposed to be a couple or not, but it's like really bad. And you can see where, her thing works if in limited type of movies, her darkness and her comedy and the way that she presents herself. There's certain movies it works and interviews, but it's just not like it's a gimmick, right? All these celebrities have their gimmicks, all these people, all these channels, all the content providers, people have a gimmick. They create a persona and a character, Alex Jones, and it works for whatever period of time, and then it doesn't. Like it's not something that it's a lifelong relationship you can have with somebody basically puppeting themselves, right? creating a caricature of themselves, right? The Fonz or Jim Ignatowski, or these Latka and the Taxi, and these breakout comedy characters, and it's just some character on Saturday Night Live. It works for a little bit, and then it just ceased to be funny, and then it's just weird, like it's annoying, and you're like, why are you still doing that, right? Like Stephen Colbert being a character on his TV show, but being himself, like being called Stephen Colbert, but pretending to be a right-wing, mocking right-wing host by pretending to be one. There's some humor in the beginning, but then it's like, why are you still doing this, right? And then he would do these interviews in character, and it's weird, right? You got to let it go. You create a character, it might be funny for a little bit, and then it's time to hang it up. Like it's maybe for some period of time, but it doesn't age well, right? It's going to retroactively suck. And so, this is what Aubry Paza, like her whole thing. And, I happened to see this movie, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so awkward. And the same day, I found out her husband killed herself. I'm like, wow, this is really awkward. If you see the movie, there's like so little connection between these two characters, and her banter is not funny. She doesn't deliver the jokes, and she's clearly like uncomfortable in this role as some kind of super spy. Anyways, let's move on to the next thing here. Okay, so today's Tuesday, January 7th. I just put up a video for tomorrow, and this video will be going up 2 days from now on Thursday. It will be public on Thursday at some point. And this is going to go towards the end of the video, but I wanted to, I turned the TV on, and it was on Fox News. And Trump says some things about Afghanistan, which is my belief as well, right? So, he's working on the fish boy thing here. People have a hard time understanding. Like, everyone wants to have just like two categories for people, like good guy or bad guy, or non-existent, unimportant to you, right? Especially with politicians in this world of left-right paradigm and things. And it's never black and white like that. Sometimes people are right, sometimes they're wrong, sometimes you don't know what they are because you're not sure about yourself, at least in terms of what you know or don't know, right? Or what you think you know or what you think you don't know. But sometimes politicians say things that I agree with. And when they do that, I'm not going to, even though I slam Trump and Trumpers quite a bit for, all of it, right? All the Trumpian stuff. I also find that Trump doesn't mean he'll act out in the appropriate way. So I don't know how I'm going to cover the rest of this press conference. This is the only part I saw. And then right after this, he starts talking about how he wants to make Canada the next, part of America. There's also rumors that he's trying to buy Greenland or some shit. So here he goes.
$1 trillion, maybe more than that. Probably the most expensive, they say it was the most expensive structure, if we call it a structure, which I guess you can, ever built. And giving that away was a horrible thing. And I believe that's why Jimmy Carter lost the election, even more so than the hostages. Those two things.
Because that was Panama.
Ukraine and
Panama Canal.
Iran, the two negotiations you'll be heading into. On Ukraine, you said just before it's a lot more complicated now.
Much more complicated.
Do you believe...
Because it would have never started.
Right, but it has started. You've
well,
got,
not only started, the cities are largely knocked down.
So
they're
you've got
like,
what you've got. At this point, to hold on to leverage in dealing with President Putin, would you make a commitment to the Ukrainians that you will keep supporting them during the negotiations?
well, I wouldn't tell you if that were the
would
case.
you make a commitment to provide a security guarantee if they do enter into an armistice or a ceasefire along the lines that the French and the Germans?
So, a big part of the problem was Russia for many, many years, long before Putin said you could never have NATO involved with Ukraine. Now, they've said that. That's been like written in stone. And somewhere along the line, Biden said, no, they should be able to join NATO. Well, then Russia has somebody right on their doorstep, and I could understand their feeling about that. But there were a lot of mistakes made in that negotiation.
So, this is the truth of Ukraine, right? I don't know what the policymakers... See, what's happened with Trump is they didn't like the idea of Trump. They didn't like the idea of an outsider, even though Trump wasn't an outsider. He was one of them. but he was a business one of them, right? So he's somebody jumped from the celebrity world, so-called businessman. He wasn't really a great businessman. He was a failure kind of as a businessman. But he was a reality TV star celebrity and had made money, despite his bad decisions and his, failings as a businessman. He's just a flim-flam man, which is what politicians are, right? It's people with charisma, and a lot of them don't even have that much charisma, and they're able to sell you various things, right? And so, Trump came in, and they didn't like him because, one, he was an outsider. Two, he didn't pay his dues politically. And three, he just didn't follow their rules and didn't even know their rules and didn't care about their rules. And he didn't act presidential. He didn't have the same kind of decorum and these things. So that was their big problem with Trump. Media and these, lifetime politicians. But now they've just basically feel like he's gone through the ringer. And although, the Democrats still hate him and the media is still negative about him, the wind's gone out of their sails. They're just like defeated. They still talk about him and they'll still cover him because it's good for their ratings. But the American people are just over it. Unless there's some major failure or some crisis that they can blame on Trump and they can revive their hatred for him. This is just going to be like a low energy presidency until things start happening, right? But what Trump says that's right, and I don't know if he's ignoring his, there's people that advise him what he can and can't say about national security and national defense and the narratives that the media and the government are trying to create, that Russia and Putin are bad. But what Russia and Putin said all along was that if the Ukrainians had NATO, that would put them in a very vulnerable position with the NATO organizations, the NATO organization being primarily there to defend Europe against Russia. And so if they have the Ukraine just sitting there with nuclear missiles from America on their doorstep, they would be in a really bad position. The same thing we did when they were trying to give Castro nuclear missiles to put off the coast of America. I mean, that was like America said, no, you're not doing that. Like that's, we're not allowing you. We'll go to war right now rather than be that vulnerable. So Putin had every reason to not want that, especially since the Democrats have such a hard-on for Russia since he blocked them in Syria. Now they finally tumbled Syria, but he, stopped them using, ISIS, which was an American asset, from destroying Assad in Syria. Ever since that, the Obamas and the Democrats and the Hillary Clintons, they've had a hard-on for Russia. They want war or conflict with Russia. They want to revive the war and conflict with Russia. And the neocons even more so. The neocons are running Joe Biden's administration. So Trump is 100% right here, at least in terms of the show. I mean, that's the dispute here. The reason the Russians went to war is the NATO thing. They take away the NATO thing, and the war would have never happened. So Joe Biden pushed for war. Because, of course, he did, because he's a Ukrainian guy. His son was in there. He's had dealings with the Ukraine. He was in charge of the Ukraine. He was vice president. He was involved with the Ukraine as a senator, and that was where they made their bank because they laundered money through that. That's how they always do, right? They take American taxpayer dollars and give it to these countries, and then they launder money through these countries, right? And so, yeah.
And when I heard the way that Biden was negotiating, I said, you're going to end up in a war. And it turned out to be a very bad war. And it could escalate. That war could escalate.
See, what he's missing here is the neocons wanted a war. They thought they could destroy Russia in the Ukraine like Russia got destroyed when they went after Afghanistan. If they just gave the Ukrainians enough, and Ukraine is a big country with a big military, if they gave enough support, they could bankrupt Russia without ever having to fight a war with Russia. Turned out the opposite happened. Like America's depleted now, our resources, and we're already on the ropes. The people who are not a part of the NATO and pro-American know that this was a dick move by the Americans, and they know that China's looking to pick America off anyway, economically at least. And so it backfired. This is like a disaster. They don't want to admit it, but it's a fucking disaster.
To be much worse than it is right now. It was always understood. In fact, I believe that they had a deal, and then Biden broke it. They had a deal which would have been a satisfactory deal to Ukraine and everybody else, but that Biden said, no, you have to be able to join NATO. And that's always been, and nobody knows more about NATO than I. You know, years ago when I first started this, I didn't know too much about NATO.
But now I'm the foremost expert on it. I knew zero about it.
I got it right anyway.
He got it right anyway. So that's like him admitting, like he was just guessing at shit. And, you know, he in his business life, he guessed wrong quite a bit. He made a lot of bad decisions and really poor business decisions. He went bankrupt 6 times. He didn't pay people. I mean, aside from that, he was just a shitty businessman. And a lot of it was just smoke and mirrors and an illusion. He was great at talking himself up. He was great at getting people to believe that he was better than he was. And he was successful, but not because he was like someone who had a good business mind. It was more charisma, the same thing that's making him successful as a candidate. He gets people to believe in him, and he can get people to give him money. Like he's, you know, the two things that he's successful at. And so, you know, he came in and knew nothing about these various things, and he was just guessing at them. And he didn't care what other people did. In fact, he just assumed he was smarter and better than what they were. And sometimes he was right, sometimes he was wrong. And he didn't take in, you know, historical factors. He just looked at it like the bottom line type of things. And that's hurt in terms of public relations and just doing the right thing. Like his policies towards Iran are not taking into consideration what America did to Iran before. But anyways, I'll cover the beginning of this. So, you know, I'll go back and cover the beginning of this after, you know, tomorrow or something. But it's interesting that he's, you know, like his position, which we knew all along was that Biden fucked it up, right? And that's an easy position to take, but it's not always the truth. But in this case, it is. So this is why he's getting this thing right. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning here. This is Donald J. Trump. I'm just going to cover some of this. And to Trump's credit, which shouldn't get any credit at all for this, it shows you how bad Joe Biden was. Like Trump does, I don't know, on over an hour press conference here. You know, it's January 7th. He's just been confirmed as president. They'll swear him in pretty soon. Biden and Kamala Harris are disappearing, like I showed you in my last video I put up here. And, you know, the whole stuff with her, which is hilarious. But in terms of Trump, like, he's doing a press conference for over an hour, which Joe Biden, I don't think, did his entire time as president. I don't know if Kamala Harris did anything like that. And, you know, not that I'm comparing because they all suck, but, you know, it's in that sense, it's a step in the right direction. Not that press conferences really matter. You know, his house is gaudy here, this Mar-a-Lago thing.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you. Many things are happening that are exciting, very exciting for our country. And we're honored to welcome one of the...
Okay, let's move forward here.
Can't even talk about aspects of the case that are the most vital aspects. I'm under. Do you know that I'm the president-elect of the United States of America? I'm a former very successful president. We had the greatest economy in the history of our
we know that shit.
department. I mean, Jack Smith had cases all over the place. People
so they start off with the cases.
Better, they look much better. 60% of homes and apartments have gas heaters. He wants them all removed quickly. These people are crazy. There's something wrong with them.
There's something wrong with those people.
Other countries. They laugh at us because they think we're stupid. But we're not stupid anymore.
We're not stupid anymore. We were when Biden was president, but now we're smart. Our country, just like our IQ went up since Biden got booted.
So the Panama Canal is under discussion with them right now. They violated...
Okay, so like the questions here.
This has been pretty openly reported by the news. There's never been anything like what's happened in the list. Since we won the election, a couple of months, since we won the election, the whole perception of the whole world is different.
It's all totally different. It's just different because he says so.
Do you have concerns about HTS taking control?
By the way, I have the envoy here. Is that in the back? It is. Standing with my son, Eric, is Steve Woodcock.
So it seems like he took questions for about a half hour here.
And so...
Okay, who's this fucking guy?
By rioters on January 6th. Will you pardon anyone who attacked a police officer?
Well, you know, the only one that was killed was a beautiful young lady named Ashley Babbitt.
Babbitt. They got Babbitt.
She was killed. And there was actually somebody else that was killed also, a MAGA person, but people don't give it 100% credibility. I'm going to find out about it. We're going to find out.
Wait, you don't know? He's going to find out about it. He's going to find out that MAGA person was killed or not.
But Ashley Babbitt was killed. She was shot. Should have never been shot. She was shot.
See, Trump is riding a wave of he hasn't done anything yet. Like the stuff that the people are upset about him in terms of his old presidency, that's 4 years ago. So he hasn't done anything yet. And, all of these things, right? So there's a period of time where he has a grace period. But things are going to happen. Like the economy is completely fucked. Like it's just been fucked for a long time. And that's going to collapse. And there's whatever things are going to happen, World War III, whatever issues are going to have. He's really fishboying it here. And so, this is what the presidency is. It's people are feeling one way about their lives and they're scared or they're not. They're feeling good. They're optimistic. Things go up. Stock market goes up because Trump's going to deregulate more things. And, there's probably close to being an economic crash at the end of Trump's first presidency because he deregulated everything. And the banks did the same bullshit that caused the collapse in 2007, 2008, right? The banks and Wall Street are some of his handlers. And so in all that, the guy, he is, he's a sitting duck, right? But he has this time of glory where he won. And, it's like a redemption time. Beat, what was left of the Biden administration.
No reason whatsoever. In fact, they say that she was trying to hold back the crowd. And
She was doing a good job, actually.
Just as fair and strong, but fair again.
Okay, so
that's not so unusual. Yes, please.
I wanted to ask you about Ukraine and Putin.
Yeah, we saw this already.
$6 trillion too. We're going to start knocking it out pretty fast. So, if I get it right, the fake witch hunt started by the DOJ.
The fake witch hunt? Well, it wasn't a fake witch hunt, right? Unless you're a fake witch.
What you're saying is I'm just hearing that they're not allowed to issue the report. So if they're not allowed to issue the report, that's the way it should be. Because he was thrown off the case in disgrace.
In disgrace. He was disgraced, that motherfucker.
Asylums into our country. I believe that's the reason we got such a large vote. All right, maybe one or two more questions. Yeah, please, go ahead. Go ahead. You go.
Sir, can you, President Carter is laying in state today in Washington.
Okay, that's who gives a shit about that.
It's only a stupid person would answer it. Look, it's a military strategy, and I'm not answering your questions on military strategy. All right, one more. Brian, go ahead. Brian.
Could you give us a preview of what you might be talking to leaders of Congress who are expected to come here in the next couple of days? And you've got a very supportive Congress behind you.
Yeah, they're great. So we have a wonderful Republican Congress. We have a leader.
So Fox News is going to do whatever they do, but the mainstream media is just looking for a soundbite. They're looking for something that they can savage the guy on, right? Like he should kind of be aware of it. This is why Biden probably didn't do press conferences, also because he was, he's always on the verge of showing his senility. But, Trump loves to talk, and he loves to just kind of go off the cuff. And he's always going to say something that they can gravitate to. And, if you tune in to Morning Joe tomorrow and some of these other MSNBC shows, well, CNN, but more so MSNBC, they'll pull little, bumper sticker things that he said here, little comments here and there. And they'll go in on it, right? The Word tonight with Lawrence O'Donnell. You'll see these things and they'll come up and they'll be whatever they are. And, the mainstream media has so few viewers and people are just kind of over the whole Democratic Party. They know they got fucked by Kamala Harris's, whatever it is. I mean, it's just low morale there on the left. And so Trump has this grace period. We'll see what happens, like whatever. But I think most of the stuff is out of his control. There was one thing he said about Greenland. Let's see if I can find that comment here.
Please.
Back on Greenland, your position is clear, but have you directed your staff to take any specific actions to drop plans? And can you elaborate again? You didn't rule out military coercion.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have a
They haven't. They've been talking about it all the time. Greenland. I've heard so much about it. So there was a tweet that showed up on my phone yesterday. The Twitter recommended, X recommended, that, if it was called X originally, it'd be fine. But then what would they be, X's? Like, there wouldn't be tweets, right? It's like there's still tweets, and yet, they're things called X. But anyways, they recommend things. And some guy who I've never seen before, must be a Republican, say, Trump is in negotiation to buy Greenland. And this is what is referenced here.
Approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking.
They should give it up, right? It's got a lot of resources there. And it's, well, let me show you that on a map in a second. He's saying he doesn't think Denmark has a right. Of course they do. The Danish colonized it. I mean, then, all the white people come from British descent don't have a right to America. I mean, it's, there's any country you could say. They should give it up. They should just give it to America, right?
About protecting the free world. You look at, you don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people.
Well, they probably do. I think a lot of people do know because there's a history there. It never was talked about Greenland being part of America. The people who live there are, they speak Danish, right? This is from the Viking days, when the Vikings were kicking ass all over the place, and they were sort of centralized in Denmark. Let me show you a map here. So when I was a kid, I was into the Vikings. My first football team that I liked was the Minnesota Vikings. And some reason I was into Vikings, I don't know why. And I had to do a report, and I did a report on Iceland. Now, Iceland is a northern island, but it's still, farther south than Finland and some of these places here, right? And it has got these glaciers, these geysers, this steam coming up, these hot springs and things. It's supposed to be a lovely place and interesting people. Greenland, they speak Greenlandic, but also Danish. So Denmark is here. And, there was all these pirates, these Vikings that came from Denmark, and they kicked ass. They took over. There's a Danish person that was king of England for a while, and they took over France. They had this period where the Vikings were just everywhere, kicking everyone's ass. They had the best navy, and they were like big, tough guys. They were taller and, better warriors. And now, I know a lot of Danish people from doing the meditation, and they're kind of pussycats, really sweetheart people, nice people. But at one time they were, fairly, big and violent. And so Greenland is just basically all snow and frozen. They have, Icelandic sheep you can get and Icelandic horses that have learned to survive on very scarce food. And so when you get these, they're really good breeds and they're tough and hardy, right? Because, Iceland is a difficult place to live, long winters, and they have, warm geysers, warm water coming up these hot springs. Greenland is just a place that has almost no summer, no growing season. The people there are real tough. And, you can see where it's proximity. It's more, should be Canadian than American, right? It's, off the coast of Maine here a little bit. Down here is Maine. But mostly it's close to Canada. And this is all frozen area, right? This is all just frozen stuff. And so I can see where they could have some military bases there, something, NATO bases. I don't know what Trump's issue is. But they do have natural resources there that Denmark probably doesn't want to give up, right? But Trump's like, I don't know. This is when Trump's kind of hilarious when he just says shit like, I don't even know if Denmark has a legitimate claim. Well, they kind of do. But, whatever. So I want to talk a little bit more about what I was talking in the beginning, then I want to get into critical thinking skills and some of these other things here. And so here's the pictures of the farm. You know, this thing about cycles, my son used to watch me do this in the winter because I talked about it, and he remembered, you know, doing that. Like he saw me doing, he was probably like 4 or 5 or 6, 4 or 5. And so I have a bonus video. Let me put the video up here. So this really poor quality video here. This is one of my original videos. You know, we had a video camera that shot in high def or whatever, digital. But it didn't convert to something you could put up on YouTube. It's like a Sony camera. So I had to get some sort of program to convert it, and it just blurred the video. I mean, subpar. This is our cow Phoebe, our cow Fiona, our cow Pezra, and our donkey Bo. This was an invention of mine, kind of a knockoff on the straw bale housing. So, you know, people build houses out of straw bales. And what I do is we either harvest posts from the property or I bought posts. This one I think was bought post. There's a second barn I did like this, third barn. And 2 at the other property. We had another homestead we developed and sold. And we would put the posts in and put chicken wire on either side, stuff it with straw for insulation, and then put cement mortar on the outside of it. Relatively cheap to do. Put some plywood up here for windows that we take down in the summer for ventilation. And I set up an area right here where the cows would eat without wrecking the hay, because they stand in the hay and they poop in it and they waste all kinds of hay. So I put individual areas and made these so they wouldn't. Sometimes they want to go sideways and sort of box out the other cows so they can't get to the food. It's a whole thing. But that was that thing there.
Later.
There was our gate. We let them out here and they walk over to the barn.
It changes.
There's our chicken house that was built the same way.
So here, you know, the nights get about in the 20s, down to the 20s every night, and we deal with.
This was a place where the cows could get minerals. There's a little bucket there they would feed out of.
Frozen water. And cows don't, make as much milk as them.
So this is what I was talking about earlier in the video, and I just thought I'd show you this. So our trough here of water, it holds like, 80 gallons of water. And 4 animals. Probably took 3-4 days for them to drink it all, depending on the season. But often in the winter, I'd come out, I'd go to milk. It'd be 20 degrees out in the morning quite often in the winters. And there was an inch of ice there, or sometimes even 2 inches. I take this thing you'd like scrape ice on a sidewalk with. There's a heavy duty sort of ice chopper. I also had these big bars that were like whatever the thing's called. Sometimes some kind of like it was like a leverage bar. It's like 5-6 feet long, and it's made of heavy steel. And a digging bar. And I would sometimes have to crack the ice with that. Then I take out the chunks, and there was all these chunks just sitting there, like they were all kind of almost formed a sculpture by the end of the winter. And then they would get access to the water. It wouldn't start freezing up usually towards the end of the day. And then when I had to fill it, I would take the hose and I would, connect it. We had these spigots that are below the frost line. And it's something good to know about, because like every farm that has a area where it's freezing, you have to have that, because like you can't get access to water and you need it unless you have like a running stream that never freezes or something, because you have to water your animals. And my son had watched me do this, and so like he had a memory of it, and we were talking about it because it'd come like full circle doing it so many years later. The video was from 17 years ago, 2007 I believe, or 8. It had 685 views and no comments because I made the video private. I don't know if I made it unlisted or something, it would show the comments. But either way, who cares? But from years and years ago, again, the quality of videos just, it was one of the bummers that they're not better quality, because I would be able to use them as like, some sort of memory thing if I ever got nostalgic. Go back and watch them, but it was just like just really subpar. But anyways, let's get into the critical thinking skills here. So the first thing I want to say is one of the messages I have is about personal change and personal growth. And I don't talk about my internal journey all that much. Of course, in the Journey series, I talk about a little bit more, but that's often goes along with stories. But it really can't talk about your inner workings and your developing your character and changing and seeing things inside yourself you have to change. Because it's kind of pretentious, new age to kind of talk about it, right? It's like bragging, and it's something very personal. But I can give you an example from this channel, like one of the initial things, and I've had these things over the years. This was one of the bigger ones, right? So when I first started making truther videos, I, like if I made videos about Hollywood celebrities, possibly, like female hobby celebrities possibly being male, some of my original videos, these things, right? That whole thing. That became a whole genre that I kind of started, which I'm not proud of, right? But either way, when I was making videos like about something like that, I would pick the pictures that made the women look the most masculine and ignore the ones that made them look more feminine. Because some of the pictures, they look more like a woman, sometimes they look more like a man. And so I'd only pick the ones that supported my case, the argument I was trying to make, the video I was trying to make. And so I kind of realized I was fucked up. Like I realized that if, this is supposed to be a truth channel and this is the whole thing, whatever the genre of videos and things. And so I adjusted myself. Like I changed that the way I did that. Because it was just wrong to do it that way, right? And then I started to realize, well, I'm talking about things like they're facts just because I have some level of, belief that they're facts, or I'm convinced myself. But I, really I'm speculating. And I started to talk about things where I would, first of all, I would say what the official story was or what, most people believed. And I would explain why I didn't agree with that, right? So that's part of my, mocking the whatever people's beliefs and things. But it came from this idea that I should at least state what they believe. So I, first had to know what the official story was and where it came from and why people believed what they believed. And then I would explain why I believe what I believed. And I made a distinction between fact and speculation. And it was a kind of a, huge growth for me because, I was responsible to my audience because my audience was looking at me as possibly, a truth teller or whatever my audience believed about me, right? And to myself, and then just to the subject itself, right? And be, more aware of the various elements of it, And so, of course, I could make mistakes from time to time, but I changed the way I went about it. And it was, a moment of growth for me, right? In terms of what I was doing now as a job. And I've changed this over and over again over the years. Like I've, just grown as a spiritual, in my spiritual journey. And that has shown in the videos themselves. And sometimes there's, when I first started doing this, I started to listen back to my videos. And I was like, if I didn't know who I was and it wasn't my thoughts, and I was just a new person coming and listening to this person, I wouldn't understand what they were talking about, what I was talking about. And so I slowed down because I talked too quickly. You can see this earlier in the videos. And, I wasn't good at articulating things. And there was just so many issues with the way I spoke that I had to work on, right? I had to change and grow to make this, the videos worth watching. So there's, all these things that I've had to do just in terms of this profession. And then in my spiritual journey, my personal life and things over the years. And I've given some examples of these in my Journey series, but it's something I'm very aware of, right? And I'm also aware of, like, it's not my responsibility to change other people. Having worked as a counselor and a therapist and, been a parent and an uncle and, all these things, a child, all these, living a full life and expressing, my desire to get other people to change or seeing things they needed to change and trying to either help them with them, even in some cases getting paid to do that. Working in treatment centers where the kid was, my client was court ordered or mandated by the state to change, right? Like they had to change or they're going to jail. Like it was forced there, they had to come to a therapeutic, they had to go through their therapeutic program or else they would, be criminals, they were given a chance to change or go to jail, right? But in all that, I'm very aware of my need to change because that's what spirituality is. It doesn't matter what other people are doing, and my influence on them is, minimal at best in terms of I'm not responsible for them changing. And if I set a good example, or if I say something that inspires them, or I guide them to the Sajmark system, which helps them change or whatever, it's a role that I play, but the change is theirs. People have to change on their own, right? And I'm very clear on that. I'm not, I don't get bummed out if people suck and they continue to suck, because that's, their prerogative and, whatever my experience with them is. I mean, even people who I'm, close to, I know in my life, it's, I've given up on that. And it just, it's a lot better to realize that you can't force other people to change, and you can't allow your emotional state and your own spiritual path be affected by whether other people change or not. I really want to address people's need to tell other people they suck on the internet, because it's something I've talked about. It's why I make, one of the reasons why I make the comment videos, right? So first, let's deal with the free speech part, and then I'll deal with the critical thinking part, and then I'll deal with, the need people have, the psychological deprivation, the psychological issues people have who have this perpetual need to tell other people they suck, right? So the first part is freedom of speech. Now, Americans really don't understand what the idea behind the Constitution was. So freedom of speech in the Constitution, not that the Constitution is some sacred document to me, but it's a good document for what it represents, and certainly the freedom of speech part, was that you weren't allowed to say certain things based in your caste level, your level in society. Whether you were a lord or somebody, you'd have more freedom of speech, but then you have social pressures. But somebody criticized the king, in a newspaper article, and they throw the guy in jail or kill him, right? Because he, broke the law. There was laws about being able to criticize the king or the government, and there are very strict laws about what you could do, the right to assemble and protest things, right? They had these very strict laws that were specifically about the government and one's relationship to the power structure and a common man's ability to speak their truth, right? But even in the document itself, the guys who wrote it had slaves, and this didn't count slaves. And it didn't count women either. Women didn't have the freedom of speech, and they have the right to vote, and slaves certainly didn't. Indentured servants, all these people. But it was a step in the right direction, right? But it still didn't represent what people think it is today. Because aside from your legal ability to speak your mind or whatever it might be, there's social pressures. There's lots of things you can't say just based in your social situation, right? Freedom of speech doesn't mean you can't get fired for, saying something, or, any number of consequences you get from saying things. And we all have said things that were like, I wish I didn't say that, right? And the reaction that we got from saying it was far worse than what we originally said, right? So freedom of speech is not a real thing. It doesn't really exist in, the larger parameters of things, because there's always going to be some level of restrictions to what you can and can't say. So the critical thinking part is this. I like that people get a place now, social media, where they can express their feelings, either in their own posts or in comments and things like this. That's critical thinking. They're learning the basics of critical thinking. When you go through school, and it varies country to country and place to place, but they don't really teach you for critical thinking. You're supposed to repeat things, just saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and mindlessly go along with what you're told. There's right and wrong answers, and they're not really that concerned about you developing your own opinion and being able to support your opinion and research your opinion and these things. It's just not taught. People would give their opinions to friends and families and things like this. And there were people who were able to give their opinions, like educated people who were, trained journalists and, editorialize, and people who wrote papers and books and, wrote news articles and were pundits on TV. But it was a limited amount of people on the radio, talk radio. And so there's a limited amount of people who were trained and were allowed to do critical thinking. But it was, a club. It was restricted by various agencies in terms of the FCC that's in charge of the broadcasting of whatever TV and radio shows. And if you said things that were offensive, including swearing, you could lose your license. your radio, your radio show could be taken, your radio station could be taken away, and TV station. So it was very limited of what you could put out there in the airwaves and printed material and these other things, right? So there was limitations to your freedom of speech, and lots of people didn't develop critical thinking skills. So when I went to a couple of alternative schools, my third attempt at college, they wanted people to be critical thinkers. It was for more adults, people who had life and work experience, people in their 20s and 30s and things, people coming back to school to get their degree in human services. And then I went to kind of a new age school to get my master's degree. And, both of these schools had like long weekend classes and things. And, the idea of expressing yourself and was very supported in both these schools. It's something that I was already kind of good at, but it's never something that you stop developing. You have to work on it your whole life. It's the way you think about things, the way you generate your lens in which you view the world. And most people don't do any kind of change and development. And people are on the internet, they just, they're making the same mistakes over and over again. They're not developing, they're not growing, they're making the same kind of content. They're not evolving as a person. And they're not looking to change and evolve. It's not part of what they're doing. And so their opinions are kind of worthless, right? They're not educated in the first place. They're not trained to do this. And oftentimes they're either reactionary or they're just regurgitating other things that other people believe. And they don't know how to think for themselves, right? The majority of people don't know how to think for themselves. And so in that is this need that people have to slam other people and tell other people they suck. And I think that makes up a good percentage of the comment base in terms of social media. I think most things in social media, people are looking to pick a fight. They're looking to argue with somebody. They're looking to dump their ickiness that's inside of them, the ugliness that's inside of them on somebody else, right? And for that reason, that's why I ban people and I occasionally call people out. Because it's as big a part of the problem of human behavior, this constant need to tell other people they suck. You want other people to feel your anger, your hatred for them, your disdain for them, and you want to dump it on them, right? And it's one of the things I respect least about people in the internet. And I don't care who you're doing it to, if you're doing it to Alec Baldwin or Joe Biden or any piece of shit out there that, you think is horrible and we all agree is horrible, because it's not going to make things better. The other person's never going to go, you're right, I am a piece of shit, I'm going to change. Like, when has that ever happened, right? There's that meme I have of the comedian Brian Regan, who said something spectacular happened, something new and spectacular happened on the internet today. Somebody gave a strong political opinion, and somebody to somebody they disagreed with, and the person they disagreed with said, you're right. It just doesn't happen. All these arguments, all this bullshit, all this hostility, it just is negative energy. You're creating something that is, it's palpable. You have something negative inside of you, and you're just looking to dump it on somebody else. And the issue isn't the other person. Like I said, it's the object of the negativity and the toxicity that's inside of you, right? It's something that's there, and you just want to dump it on somebody else. And you want them to feel it. They want you to feel your disease inside of you. You want to put your whatever it is, your pathology on that other person. And it just makes everything worse, right? And there are people who leave informative, thoughtful comments, intelligent people who have, good ability to express themselves, good ability of reasoning. But the fact that they're going to get harassed by any number of pieces of shit out there who, just want to dump their crap on somebody else who doesn't agree with them, people end up not posting those kind of comments, posting those things because they just don't want the bullshit they're going to get from other people, which is a sad state of affairs, right? And so what you have is the toxic people, the negative people, the people who just want to dump their internal grossness, their ugliness, their evil on somebody else, kind of wreck the whole social aspect of social media. And so this is one of the many reasons I ban people and I don't, I once in a while rip into somebody. It's because this behavior is just a real, like a bummer and real, like blemish on on human beings as a whole. I talk about the Sajmark philosophy that if you hate somebody, the hate is yours. They're the object of your hate. And if you hate this person today, it'll be somebody else tomorrow. It's the hate you have to deal with inside of you. And so, people getting rewarded by other people and people gang stalking people and keep people slamming people and, doing this and patting each other on the back like they're doing something. It's just, it's despicable. And there's lots of pieces of shit people. We all suck to some degree or another, right? We all suck. Like I've talked about this quite a bit. I'm going to stop talking here because my voice is going. I'll finish this up tomorrow. People can find, and you can find it in yourself, something that sucks about you, right? We all suck, right? We all suck. I suck, you suck, we all suck. Okay, so I'm glad I waited to complete this video, this audio here. Today's Wednesday, January 8th. There's my core responsibilities here. What I believe to be my mission. This is my mission statement to people who understand it, right? And the people who are my audience. This is a distinction here. Just because you listen to my videos doesn't mean you're my audience, right? So I had a really good meditation this morning and just a really good morning overall and just, clarity about what I want to say. And, when I am talking at the end of the day, like sometimes I do really good voiceovers at the end of the day, but like I'm tired and I'm not as crisp. My voice isn't often as good, whatever. And so, it's just there's more energy in the beginning of the day in general. So I'm glad I waited. So before I get back to what I was saying, this is my core message here. So in terms of the truth community, there's lots of people who understand the nature of the problem, the nature of our modern day system, right? People understand the issues here. I mean, in the truth community, but even beyond the truth community. Most people can tell you some truth, they have it right about some aspects of the beastly system. They understand some of the problem. Because to find the problem is easy. Most people only can focus on part of the problem because the whole problem is overwhelming, right? And that is the nature of our entire system, the orientation of our entire system, and everybody who's in it, because we're all part of the system. And so the overwhelming truth is we have devised a system collectively that goes against our spiritual evolution, our personal evolution, and is degrading us, right? The idea of idiocracy. The movie Idiocracy is a good example of what's happening to human beings, right? They're being degraded, we're being degraded. And we're becoming less and less than we were before. And what we were before wasn't great. Like what we were before, we weren't like a complete product. We, even tracing back thousands of years, the human beings have had issues. And there's lots of low vibrational, low consciousness, animalistic tendencies. The lower. We have an ego problem that keeps us from becoming what we're supposed to become. And that is something that most people can't deal with because when the whole system's a problem, then there is no solution within the system itself, right? The only solution is to remove the system. As I always say, we're 100% dependent on the system in one way or another. Like some people have some skills, but, they're not, they're still dependent on the system. And I say this over and over again. In our weakened state, in our de-evolved state, in our dumbed down idiocracy state, in our low vibrational state, we don't have the capacity to go back to what we were before, 3 generations ago. We don't have the capacity to go back and be villagers and tribal people and to live without electricity and live without heat. There's unique things that I've said, like in terms of the homesteading things, that there was a deal that was made to move people off of their homesteads, off their villages, out of their tribes, and into this system with this false promise that all the skills that they're about to shed and all the abilities and all the strength that they had and all the ancestral generational wealth of knowledge that they were going to lose wasn't going to be necessary anymore. And of course it is, because they were fucking lying, right? So, and there was a reason why it had to happen, beyond what I call the controllers, right? That there's a plan here. But defining the problem, which I believe I do in some ways better than, I don't know. I can't compare myself to other people I don't listen to, right? But I feel like I do a good job of that. But that's not why I'm here. That's not my message. Because you can listen to so many different people tell you what the problem is in different capacities. And some specific problems or the overall problem and all the rest of it. And so the problem is available to you. But what isn't is the solution. So my core belief personally, and then what I say here, in terms of what I do here, Pockets of the Future, and the related YouTube channels and anything else that I do, the core belief is that there was a solution to this problem, a singular solution, which is the Husaband method of meditation. And the transmission and cleaning and the related services are there to help people rise up to a completely different level of creature, like a genetically modified on a material level, but much more importantly, a spiritually evolved human being who is far beyond their petty little, our petty little materialistic tendencies and our desires and addictions and urges and egos and all that bullshit, right? All the bullshit that is wrecking the planet right now. And so in this solution, there is work that's been done to get rid of the problem, to destroy the problem, to get rid of the system as it is now, to get rid of all the things that are blocking people from evolving and rising up to a higher level. So that's part of the solution. The work, the destructive work, something has to end for something else to begin, right? And there is going to have to be massive die-off for all the people that aren't ready for this kind of transformation. So when I'm talking about transformation of this nature, when you think about a caterpillar to a butterfly, right? Something in the caterpillar is compelled to become a butterfly, but the caterpillar is completely unaware of butterflies and flying and what it would like to be a butterfly, and just like the tadpole is unaware of what it's like to be a frog. Any kind of transformation. There's various, there's these wonderful red-bellied newts. In California, they're quite toxic, a sort of related creature. But in the eastern part of America, there's these red-spotted newts that are a part of a three-chain generation. It's some sort of a little nymph-like creature, and then it becomes a newt, and it just marches in the forest, and there might be bunches of them. You'll see them. I've only seen one at a time. I used to see them a lot at our other homestead. And they just come marching through our yard at some point in the year, and they're really significant, right? And they have these red spots, and I think creatures think they're poisonous. And then they go back into the water and become a salamander, right? They have three-stage evolution. They start off as some like tadpole-like creature, small, undeveloped creature. They leave the water, and they go back to the water, and they become an amphibian, and they live in the water again. So you have this kind of evolution. And it's natural, and they're compelled by some biological tendencies and need. But evolution in human beings is by choice. Being in the third-dimensional reality. The third master of the Husaband system gave this wonderful talk in a book called The Role of the Master in Human Evolution. That's there's copies of it available on eBay. And he talked about how before you become a human being, your process up to being a human being, whatever that process is automatic. And it takes a long time, right? From whatever you start off as until you're, a higher level consciousness being. And then you have spiritual evolution, which is completely by choice. There's no forcing it. There's no automatic evolution. Nothing happens. Nothing's guaranteed. You can go as far as you can reach the ultimate goal, or you could not evolve at all, and it's up to you. It's your choice. But once you graduate from the human condition, even on a lower level, because there's different levels of graduation, but you're free from, this idea of liberation, which is a low-level achievement that very few people ever achieve. The idea of heaven is liberation, and most people don't get there. I don't know how many human beings over the history of humanity have reached liberation, which is, again, an easy low-level accomplishment. It's been very few. Like, it's not millions. It's not even hundreds of thousands. It's maybe tens of thousands. I don't know. Like, I don't have any way to verify that, but I know it's a very small amount. But once you reach liberation and you no longer are bound to planet Earth, then your evolution is again automatic. You're a spiritual being, and on Earth you can go to much higher levels, but wherever you leave Earth, everything becomes automatic, and it's a process and a system, and there's no choice in it. Your soul just evolves, and it doesn't resist it because there's no ego, there's no physical body, there's no illusion, there's no Maya, there's no distortion. You're just in a spirit world, and you evolve, and you do your work, and you contribute, and you are a part of the greater good, and you just do it automatically. There's no option for failure. There's no choice on your part. And so spiritual evolution here is 100% by choice. And the system, the Sajmark system of meditation, the transmission, the cleaning, are like a shortcut, right? And there's other systems, quality systems of spiritual evolution that have different, they're positive, and they help you connect to God and, whatever. Even religions, if you do it the right way, not what the religion tells you to do, but if you do what Jesus did or any number of these saints and you follow their example and you do it, self-effort, you'll go somewhere and you'll be in the positive direction. You embrace that you have a soul and your soul has a purpose and you have a reason for your existence and you embrace that reason and you're on your spiritual path, and, there's good in that, right? Whatever that is, right? That's, you're not taking a shortcut. You're not taking the path of the most, the most vertical path, but you're on some sort of a path, right? But to go back to what I'm saying, my simple message here is that, right? That the system that we have is taking everyone in the wrong direction, which, that's the problem statement. And then the solution is connecting to the divinity within you, and that there is a system here to expedite the process and to bring whoever's willing to go there up to a higher level after they shed their lower tendencies, their lower vibrational tendencies, embrace this path, this divinity within them, right? And that's it. That's my simple message. And, of course, I have more to do with the solution, the Gratefullness meditation, and, information about that and, whatever else I can talk about here. But that's it. And the small amount of people that can embrace that in one capacity or another, even just accept it without doing anything about it, right? They can, or at least flirt with the idea. Those are the people who are my audience. Nobody else, right? It's not, the many people, the millions of people that have watched my videos and watched me mock Britney's mental breakdown or mock Don Lemon or, talk about Trump or talk about politics or talk about, any of these things. I mean, even to some extent, the homesteading and the other things. I have one core message, one core responsibility, and it's to get that message out, that there's a solution, and it isn't my fucking solution. It isn't the solution that I created. It isn't my baby. It isn't my thing. It's something I was lucky enough to be privileged to have a chance to participate in. And so that's, my responsibility. I was gifted this wonderful system, and I wholeheartedly believe that it is the answer and the sole answer to the problem that we all see in front of us, right? If you can't embrace that, you're not my audience. Like, I'm here as a messenger, that's all. Like this message. And whatever else I do here, stuff I have to do to keep the channel afloat, the celebrity shit, the other stuff. Like that stuff is not like stuff I would do. I mean, I might sit there with my wife and make fun of stuff and joke about things and, like there's things, or, I used to do that with my friends. And part of the message is a compare and contrast. Like, you've been sold something that fame and fortune and material success is why you're here. And that's bullshit, right? The American dream, it's bullshit, which, people can gravitate to or not. Your material life, you're here to pursue happiness. The pursuit of happiness, that's bullshit. There's no pursuit of happiness. Happiness comes and goes. You're going to be happy. Some people are happier their whole life, but they have moments of sadness. Some people are sad and miserable their whole life, but they have moments of happiness. Doesn't really matter. Happiness and misery and these things have no bearing on the overall responsibilities of your soul's journey and your soul's path. I mean, they're part of it, but they're not the goal. Happiness is not a goal. So there's that, right? And anything that I do or say, my personality, anything I do would have to cope with the degraded aspect of humanity because I'm here in the middle of the fucking shit, right? I had to work with sex offenders. I had to work with the dregs of society, right? Like I've had to do low work, like, in various capacities. And there's, this job I do here, I'm staring into the abyss every day, the degradation. And the more I evolve personally, the more I see it, the more I can feel it, like the vibration of it, right? And then just all the negativity, the comments, the interactions I have with people, whatever. I mean, they're not interactions, but people displaying themselves. I have to look at the problem over and over again. People failing, humanity failing, right? And, I have to cope with that in some way, capacity, right? But, all the other stuff that I do, the jokes, the things, they're part of a construct. I don't know what to call it. The construct, I guess, is whatever it is. They're part of whatever I have to do because of where people are. Because most people, even ones who are, had excellent past lives as spiritual people, are not aware, and I wasn't aware of the things that I'm saying, like the spiritual aspects, right? Growing up in America, growing up in a very remedial religion, and growing up with the American dream and the American consciousness, I had no idea what the true purpose of my life was, the true goal and the true path of my soul. And I would have never guessed it. Like it just happened. I stumbled into the Husaband system. I had some wonderful experiences. I was exposed to the teachings and literature, and the system has proven itself to me time and time again, right? But just to be clear about this, the other things and why people come, and some people want me to mock Brittany, there's people who like it, and that's great. I don't, And then on the subconscious level, they're getting the other things and whatever. But it's only the people who are open to receiving this message that, my channel exists for. It's the purpose of Pockets of the Future. It's the purpose of this, whatever it is, this movement. The other stuff's like window dressing. It is, it is whatever it is, right? And, me coping with the internet and, the degraded nature of the internet. I'm on this, I'm in like, I don't want to call it filth, but it's filth. Like the system is filth, and, people are, whatever they are, right? Just people embracing the darkness and, wallowing in it, like pigs wallowing in the, the negativity and the hellscape that we've created here, right? That's so far away from our higher nature. So I'm either right about the Husaband system being the solution, either the teachings, some of this is the teachings, right? Some of it's the story behind the backstory. This guy Babaji was receiving messages from his spiritual master, and then these other various souls, Jesus, Krishna, Swami Vivekananda, Buddha, and then a lot of higher developed souls that people don't, they don't have some like material manifestation that people would know, but they're higher developed souls. And they are working on behalf of the divine system to bring humanity to a higher level of being. And Babaji was God's instrument to facilitate this work. What he said, there's this special personality that's working to create this. And he didn't say it was himself, because he can't say it's himself. Like, it's not his ego. It's not him as a physical person. It's his essence of his soul that's been given these, powers and these abilities to bring about this transformation and creating this system to help people to evolve if they choose to do so, right? This mission, if you choose to accept it, right? So this is, whatever this thing is. And I believe in it. But it could be wrong. It could be, it could be lies. It could be distortions. It could be, any number of things, right? Just like every other religion, every other thing. There's always the chance that it's bullshit, right? Not 100% bullshit, but, enough so that it's a failure. Like my life's a failure. I've bet on something that's, it's just it's something that's better than everything else, but not, not the real thing. Like it's just whatever it is or isn't, it isn't. Like if it's not what I think it is, then this is a failure. And my channel really doesn't have much value. I mean, in terms of it has some value because at least this idea of connecting to divinity within you is correct, right? There's something to that. Like, I know that for a fact. The Sajmark system is incredible at helping people to do that if they embrace it. They do what they need to do, right? But in that, that's the message completely. That's what I have to offer people. I'm not a guru. I'm not your master. I'm not, anything, right? I'm not your guide in any of these other things. Like, it's delivering this message that this thing is available. And of course, I'll remain a conduit for those people who embrace this message in terms of, whatever things come through me to benefit people, that people need something from me. And I randomly, without any intention on my part, just the fact that I'm willing to do it. That's the only thing, my willingness. But I'm not trying to do it. I'm not, wanting to do it. I'm not here to be your, whatever, your conduit personally, any of these things. Like, I'm not doing it for you, these things. I'm doing it because, it was done for me, and I owe that, right? I owe to, whatever debt I owe for the good things that were done for me, I have to pay it forward. So, it's who I owe, the masters of the Sajmark system, God, whatever, my soul, whatever it is, I owe them for what my own spiritual evolution, my own, gifts that I've been given through this system. I'm paying it back by serving them or serving the, God, and you happen to be the benefactors of it, right? But, there's things that, and you're participating in this experiment or this solution or whatever you want to call it, then, I'll be a conduit, like it just, and amongst many others. Do you understand that? But this small subset of viewers who embrace this, who are willing to do this system, the meditation or whatever else it is, they're my audience, the receivers of the message. And everyone else is just, people coming like this is a, like a restaurant or a rest stop. You stop by and you use the facilities and you leave, right? It is whatever it is for you. Like you're not my audience. The audience is, again, it's a self-selected group of people that are willing to embrace all of these things that I said, right? I have reason to believe that I've had many lives. Like, there might have been a life that I had. I believe there's a life I had that spanned maybe millions of years on planet Earth, which is kind of crazy to believe. And that I had, I was part of the Mahabharata. I possibly was around Jesus, maybe one of his disciples. I don't think I was Jesus, but, whatever. Doesn't really matter, right? But I have been a part of spiritual movements before. And, when I mock people like, Don Lemon comes to mind because it's just somebody, whatever it is. Any number of people, Trump, any of these people, right? There's no sense of me thinking, well, let me put it this way. I know that I'm on a higher consciousness level than some of these people because you just know when you are, right? And there is that. But in reality, these people, maybe that's their first life, second life, third life, right? The majority of people, 60% of the people on planet Earth or more, like I don't have a percentage, this is their first life, right? Whatever the population was, right? Because there has never been like 1 billion people on planet Earth. 1 billion. So whatever amount of human beings there were, now there's 6 or 7 times, it's like 1 out of every, 7, 1 out of 7 or 8 people, even maybe more, have had a past life as a human being. Like 1 or more past lives, because some people have had more past lives, right? And in rare cases, there are some higher developed souls who come from a higher spiritual reason far beyond a human being's evolution and incarnate on planet Earth. That's the saints and these, spiritual beings, or ones that have achieved something in a past existence and something like that, right? But I'm talking about souls that have never lived as a human being before. And so amongst human beings, there are some higher developed souls. But the rest of the first timers, they're coming up from an animal kingdom or some lower level. And now they're on this higher level of consciousness, which is a human being. And for those people, they can't gravitate to this idea. They're not a part of the solution. They can't be, right? because there has to be some choice. Like I said, human beings choose to spiritually evolve. And we see it, like there's a choice here. And the people who make that choice often fall. They make the initial choice, including Jesus and some of these higher developed souls. They have a spiritual fall because it's really hard being a spiritual being on planet Earth. That's why there's some level of, I don't want to call it grace or forgiveness, understanding, because it's hard as fuck to not only commit to being spiritual, it's so, alluring, right? It's so, it's so seductive, the planet and our sensory stimulation, that human beings lose their way. Plus, we're degraded. Like, there's higher developed people, human beings that lived that for, thousands of years that lived on planet Earth before. And some of us were incarnated in those, bodies. And now we're in these lower vibrational bodies, even though we have a memory of being something more, right? Where we were in a better, bodies that were less animalistic and more spiritual and more refined. And so, like, there's that. And there's, higher developed souls that, are coming from a high region, like a closer proximity to God. And then they descend into these bodies, and, there's a degradation there that we all have to deal with. Degraded tendencies, right? In terms of animalistic types of things that our modern day human beings have these, we see it all around us, right? All the low level bullshit that we all, have to, we're mired in one way or another. And we have the genetic predisposition for low level behaviors, right? That we all express in one way or another. Some people have lower level things and all these things. But if I'm right about my past lives, then, I can't look at people who are in their first life. If I've had millions of years on this fucking planet and I'm still at the first point, which is point one in the heart region in the spiritual evolution, like Jesus Christ. And so I'm not, like it sounds like I'm being judgmental and, superior or arrogant to people. But like I'm painfully aware that I've been here a while, and this is my first life where I've fully embraced, at least as far as I know, because there could have been a spiritual fall at some level, right? But I think I've been around like a long fucking time, and this is the first time I've really embraced the spiritual, element of my life, right? So, or there's been times that just there wasn't a system available to take me to the next level. So whatever it is, doesn't matter, right? But in the Sajmark teaching, even this guy Babaji, who was Patanjali in a past life, and he had spiritual lives and was always sort of a, a higher consciousness person. He said he had a life as a beggar and things as well, some of these other things, as an experience, because he was a beggar, in terms of his, he had a chapter in a book which is called a section in a book called The Beggar's Bowl, that you were all beggars before the divine Lord, before God. And we have like they have these bowls, I guess, in India, right? But in terms of all that, it's just the people who have the capacity or don't. And it's not up to me. More oftentimes, the people I like or I'm friends with will not embrace, this kind of thing. Like very few people I know. I mean, my family, my brother's doing the meditation, but even him, my brother and I, like the thing, first of all, let me say this. Those of us who have experienced Sajmarg, the way it, is or could be, or all these things, right? Those of us who have been blessed with this, we know it's a fucking blessing. Like my brother, I told him about this thing, and he didn't have the experiences I did. He was not sensitive to the transmission, but he would thank me almost every time we talked. I'm just really glad you told me about this. Like, there's competitive things and jealousies, and, he was much older than me, but there was some, my mom said he was always jealous of me, like whatever, I don't even know. Like, so whatever those things are, but he thanked me for telling him. And, he's now in Belize or something, and he's still with Dodgy. And we had, exchange of messages. I said, I don't want to talk to anybody who's still with Dodgy. I love you, you're my brother, but, I believe he's a piece of shit cult that's degraded this thing, right? And it's sad in a way, I don't think about it like that, but, my brother was like a father figure and a mentor to me when I was young. And then I, sort of passed him by or whatever happened with me and this thing, and then Saj Marg and telling him about it, and then him finding a role in the mission and being somebody who's like a little bit of a celebrity in the organization. The guy who was a caretaker of the ashram had a position and things. And of all the people I knew, he was the one person that was in my life beforehand that continued, and did the Saj Marg system. And now that relationship's, gone, and, he's, whatever it is, the whole thing. But for those of you who are lucky enough to be able to do this thing, that can get out of your way enough to do it and embrace these things, right, then there should be nothing but gratitude, in terms of what I do here. And everyone else can fuck off. They're not, and I'm not saying that some bad way, but you're not my audience. There's plenty of other content out there for you, right? If you like me, you like this stuff, some of you benefit from something, whatever. It's between you and your whatever. But there should be nothing but gratitude, despite my abrasive personality and my whatever I do that you don't like, whatever you don't like about me, right? Because you don't know what I have to go through to keep this thing going, right? Or what I had to go through to be able to be this person for you, right? The mocking and the whatever it is, like the assholeness, me being an asshole, things is necessary for me to do this job. Believe me, it is. Like, it just has to be. The internet sucks. The world sucks. It's a degraded, low-level, low-conscious vibration. And I have to dive into the abyss. If I just came in and just said every day the spiritual things, if I didn't deal with the bullshit and the fucking all of that stuff, there'd be no viewers here. Like, I have to go down, meet people where they are. And, I hope there's a reward for me, but I've already been rewarded. Like, I don't want to say it like that, like, I'm owed something, because that's an ego statement, right? I mean, I've already been blessed beyond any. I'm filled with gratitude, and I'm not a gratitude person. Like, I like, it's just there. Like, I feel grateful all the time for, the blessings I've received from the Saj Marg system and what I was before. And I know I was like such a worthless, underachieving piece of shit before who could barely function. So even on just a material level, just so I could live a life. Like, I couldn't live a life because I, was so, like, fucked up, and so, like, I had no purpose and no goal and no anything, and just the cleaning and the transmission enabled me to live a life. A life that, has been, I mean, for the most part, a good life, right? But that's not, good life, bad life, doesn't matter. It's the spiritual benefit that's important. And, with so many people so painfully unaware of their spiritual potential and their true purpose here, and I was one of them, someone willing to dive down and meet them where they are and create a place where they can receive this message. And that's what I do. Like, in, whatever's can be, applauded in what I do. Again, like, I don't want a medal and award, these fucking stupid shit, right? Like, it's, me paying off what I've gotten. Like, I recognize there's a debt here, and, and I enjoy the work. I enjoy doing it. It's not like this is some, I'm diving into the abyss, but I've become, am able to do it, right? I've, like, developed defense mechanisms. I developed whatever I have, right? But in terms of, like, the stuff that I do here, without the spiritual message, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't talk about politics. I certainly wouldn't talk about celebrities and Hollywood culture. Any of the things I've done over the years. All these subjects I cover, I have almost zero interest in them. A little bit, like curiosity, a little, but it's minor for the amount of time I fucking have to spend on them, right? And so, like, I do that to keep this thing going. And, again, there should be gratitude for that, for those people who get it, for those people who benefit from, the message, right? And once you get the message, you have to go on your own. Like, I've provided services here, and it sucks there's no Saj Marg organization like I had, and there's no preceptors like I had, and these other things. But, there's a Gratefullness meditation channel, and then there's the books that are out there that you can buy, and some of them are free on, published on the, on the Gratefullness meditation. I have all the stuff there, right? People who embrace it and do it or not. But you're on your own, right? And I know this for a fact. If you embrace your true purpose, your soul's purpose, whatever it is, whatever your purpose is, like, probably Trump has embraced his soul's purpose. But his soul's purpose isn't to connect to the divinity within him. He's not on that level yet. He's just a material being. And maybe all these other people in some way, these people who you look at and they're successful, they're embracing their soul's purpose for this life. But it's, they're missing the mark. They're below, they're not ready yet, right? But if, you are embracing your soul's purpose, there's a path for success for you. There is the things you need to complete this path. There is, the divine forces are going to pave a path for you to success, whatever it is. And if you're on the level where you can embrace the divinity within you, and again, small percentage of people that can do that, right? Then there's a path for you. There's a pathway for your success, even though most people won't succeed. At least, in this life, it takes multiple chances. It takes multiple lives, like a video game. You need, multiple. Once you get on the path, you find your true goal and your true purpose, then you're just in the beginning, right? But in terms of what's going to happen next, everyone else is like an NPC. The people who can embrace this solution, well, they can't be here. They can't be a part of because they're just going to be dragging everyone fucking down like they are now, right? I mean, different levels of that. And not, some of them don't have it. They're not ready yet. That's fine. And wherever they go, they can't be here. Because if you're going to have almost like 100%, not almost, you're going to have 100% buy-in. Like to transform this planet and for people to go from being worms to butterflies, on a spiritual level. Because, the worms are attached to being a worm. And they're scared of being a butterfly. Not in real life, not caterpillars, because they just do it automatically. But what I'm talking about here is everybody's ego is scared of blossoming and becoming the best version of what you could be. Like every person's scared of becoming a saint. And every ego is scared of losing control. It's why we don't fucking do it. It's why there's plenty of people who flirt with the idea of being devotees to God, but they never fucking do it because it's so hard to give up control of the reins of your existence and surrender it to a higher power, higher source. And that's why religions teach a lot of bunch of bullshit so you can satisfy your need to be with God and still not give up on your material, egotistical control over your lives. And so you have these religious bullshit that's out there that, you have something inside of you that's compelled to be a spiritual person, but you're scared to go and dive into the ocean of eternal bliss and give up your egotistical, stronghold on your material life. And you don't want to leave this planet, even though the planet's fucking hated here in some ways, and you're depressed and miserable or whatever you are. People don't want to leave the planet. They don't want to evolve. They don't want to be liberated from their bondage. They want to stay in jail. Like, it's just, there's all these tendencies that suck, and people have them. And so, only the people who are willing, again, needs to be 100% buy-in, are going to be allowed. That's why there has to be mass depopulation. And the people who are, there's the majority of the other content that's on YouTube, 99.9% is for those lower level consciousness people, or the people who have the ability to rise up but are still, entrapped in the mundane, low life elements of planet Earth, right? But anyways, all that other content, all that other stuff, it's just for NPCs. It's for people who just, they can't. It's not, it's not that they won't, they can't. And then there's the people who won't. They can, but they won't, right? And so all those people, fuck off. Like, that's what's going to happen. Like, the way that the British say it, right? Fuck off. Why don't you go fuck off, whatever they say, right? Because that's what's going to happen. They have to be removed from the equation. And all of us have to be aware of that. So it's the lucky, privileged few that get to be a part of this transformation. And all the higher developed souls, divine beings that have been here before, are either going to be incarnated here or are incarnated now or be around here in spirit form. And there's a spiritual focus right now to pull humanity out of its dregs and its low-level, bullshit. And there's going to be whatever. And so, like I said, either this is true or it's not, right? But in terms of this primary message, even my loved ones, I mean, particularly my kids, because that's the one that really fucking stings or used to sting, but I had to accept it, right? So I raised my kids with this idea that somehow they would surpass me and my ex and the people at that time, because there was some element of that happening. And there was some, talk about that and some teachings about that these souls were being incarnated and born into these families, these Sajmark families. It turned out that the kids either crapped out or it wasn't, whatever. I don't know. It was part of a plan. But my kids had all the benefits that I didn't have. Like I randomly, after living, a life of failure and underachieving, was gifted with the, blessing of incredible 3 individual cities and being introduced to the Sajmark system that were transformational and started me on this path, which I am eternally grateful for. And my kids grew up in it, and they had exposure to this energy and teachings, and and the idea was that they would somehow graduate into this thing, by their choice. And they took their initial sittings, and they were psyched to do it. And I could see them benefiting right off the bat. My 3 older kids, and then my younger son. But when my 3 older kids, they did it when my son was too young to start. We were in India, and I saw for a month or two when they were doing the practice, they were meditating, they were participating in it. They were all doing better. Like I could see, wow, this is great. And I was like happy. Like it was like, relieved that they now were on this path, right? But they all rejected it in one fucking way or another. And, some of them hate me, like most of them. Well, I mean, like fucking, I did my best to provide for them this opportunity and other things. And, whatever kind of dad I was. And I mean, there's a lot of it's unjustified, but they literally hate me or dislike me or, whatever. So when people leave shitty comments or people don't like me or they don't, I have real life people who fucking hate me, like my kids and, people I used to do the meditation or dislike me and they think things about me that aren't true or they, they've manifested whatever and would blame me. But, I mean, the asshole part's still there, right? I mean, some of it's justified, like some of the, I have these negative qualities. I'm a human being with flaws. I'm not claiming to be perfect, right? So there's no sense of like having to tell me I suck. Like there's just nothing there. There's sometimes people are mad at God and they feel whatever they feel here and they feel like I'm some kind of whatever. Like they want to vent their anger at God at me or whatever it might be. Whatever little butthurt thing they have, whatever it is, right? But, like in terms of people who comment, and this is like the thing I was alluding to earlier, in my last night. The people who comment and, want to tell other people they're a piece of shit, you have a problem. Like it's a massive problem and it's something that's keeping you from, I don't always say keeping you from because it's like the opposite of taking full responsibility for your existence, right? That you have to change and grow. There's people who leave a comment. And in the beginning, there are people who I used to have, message back and forth. A few people I had phone conversations with. A few people have seen me in real life, right? But, as time's gone on, I have less personal contact. Some of the people I'm friends with on Facebook or Instagram. And, I have a sense of some people. Like I recognize them. They have a profile picture or whatever. I've seen their social media things or whatever, whatever it is, right? People who I interacted with early on. But as time has gone on, I just don't have time for any of those things, right? I have less and less knowledge and contact with people who watch my videos, right? Some people write me very personal messages, which I'm able to, or comments or something, and I'm able to kind of read them, and sometimes I remember them, and I mean, it's I've had probably, 5 to 10 million comments, right? Whatever it is. Like YouTube doesn't keep track of that. But think about that, million comments. So the majority of people come in and they have nondescript usernames, no profile picture. And like I can't keep people straight, right? I can't remember all of them. I've banned 20,000 people or something, like it's crazy amount of people. Like if I scrolled through it and showed you all the people, And I don't remember any of them. Like, if I looked at every banned person, I wouldn't know why I banned them, who they are, what they said, or, whatever it is, right? Because it's all just a blur. And it's like a saving grace is the more people that, you comment, the more things that you deal with, the less comments affect you. And if these people who were leaving negative comments were honest, I mean, it sucks to do that. It's a bad behavior. But if you, take a dump on somebody with your comment, and then, you tell them they suck and you don't like their content, if you were an honest person, you would just go. Like, you would be done. Like, that would be it, right? But then there's people who will open up another account, go through all the problems, of open up another account, and then leave other comments, right? And I don't know who you are. Like, I don't, like, even though you've left other comments, because I get people who've been banned, and they come back and they leave comments that I know that there's someone, like, based in the comment, I know it's someone who's been banned. And, like, then you have to think about the fundamental dishonesty. I mean, you do, not me, because it's you and not me, right? Of your existence, because what the fuck are you doing, right? That you're opening up other accounts just to tell me I'm a piece of shit when I'm not even, like, it's not like we're having a conversation, right? You want to have some kind of contact with me, and it could be somebody else. Like, I'm just saying this behavior overall on the internet, right? And I'm saying, I have clear boundaries here, right? I make it clear to people that I'm not here to be your toilet bowl, to be here for you to dump your evil shit, your anger, your hostility, regardless of whether I've said something that hurts your feelings. Because, again, it's not personal. I'm more delicate and more diplomatic and just subtler than I was before, right? I was more of an asshole before. So, and I'm not saying I'm not an asshole. Like, that's, like I say, so I understand where I say things in a way that is, sometimes brutal and sometimes will create this. And I'm not, defending my imperfections. But like I said, I need certain level of whatever it is, right? One of the teachings in the Sajmark system is there's a snake, a cobra, that becomes like a disciple of a guru in India. And the snake, is getting spiritual training for the guru. And like 10 years go by, and the guru comes upon the snake, and the kids are torturing it and teasing it and beating the shit out of it. People are throwing rocks at it, and it's just, it's beat to shit, and it's like a mess, right? And the guru goes, "Aren't you my disciple?" And the snake said, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "Well, what the fuck's going on? Why are you like this? Why are you getting abused like this?" And the snake says, "Well, you taught me about ahimsa, which is nonviolence. It's one of the limbs of the Patanjali's 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, right? It's one of the principles behind. It's not one of the limbs. It's one of the nonviolence." And the guru says, "Yeah, I told you not to bite anybody, but I didn't tell you not to hiss," right? So it's one of the stories that Charji told over and over again, right? And, Babaji talked about how, like, he gave this technique on how you could, like, kill somebody by hitting them in a certain place and having a certain thought, a spiritual thought. If somebody was, a crazy person was coming to you. But Babaji was this little 5'2" guy who would be walking through the streets with these big Danish men and women who were like 6'2", 6'3", these, Western European people. And Babaji would carry a stick in case you have to beat off like a thief or a monkey, right? Like, so, like this isn't a passive movement. It's not an aggressive movement. It's not a warlike movement. It's not first strike movement, but you can defend yourself, and you can have an edge or whatever you need to have to survive in the environment that you're placed in. And this is a brutal environment that I'm in here. And so anything that I have to survive here, to cope here, is what I need. They're not things I'm attached to, because there's things that I've worked on, mocking people, some of these other things. I recognize that, I grew up in a, tough family where we used to make fun of each other, and I was good at that. And with my friends, and, we used to, rag on each other, and, these things, and insult battles and whatever. Make fun of each other, just kind of busting each other's, balls or whatever they call it, right? You see that show in Practical Jokers, this kind of environment, this kind of time period, that kind of stuff. Not exactly like that show, but, growing up in that region, that area, the Northeast, and, Italian, mixed family, Italian, Irish, these people. My family's kind of tough, and, and we said like mean things to each other. And, that whole area, Boston, New York, and those areas up there, people are pretty brutal, very rude, less, I mean, when I moved to the South and these other places, I don't fit in there. The places I've lived since then, I don't fit in. And I mean, I never really fit in anywhere, but, I recognized that this stuff wasn't great. Like it was, mean-spirited in some sense. And, I was good at it, enjoyed it to whatever extent it was. But, like, it's not, it's not highly as some spiritual quality. It's something where maybe there's some value in it just in terms of, help keeping people humble or whatever. But it's not a great thing. And I don't love it, but it's just part of me. Like it's my background, my upbringing, and it served me here in the internet. Like, every day I go and read the comments, someone's telling me I'm a piece of shit, right? Like it's just, and it all blends together. It's just random people. And so, there's boundaries here. Like if I say to people, this is not welcome, and I don't know how to be your toilet bowl, right? I'm not here for your, whatever ugliness that's inside of you that you want to dump on somebody else, which is, a plague on the internet, and that you're going to get banned, and I might talk about you because you've done something aggressive. There's a boundary. I mean, even if you didn't know that that's my policy, you know better than that. Like, like telling people they're a piece of shit is a hostile act. Like you've lived a life. And so when you say something to people, you criticize them, they might react, right? And they're going to react. And you have a right to have a reaction. It's just what you do with that reaction. And I make it clear to people, if I say something that you don't like, hurt your feelings, I have a belief you don't like, I say something about a group that you identify with, right? Your reaction isn't welcome. Just go. Just leave. You don't like me. You don't like what I said. You're offended, whatever. Just go. Like you're free to leave. But people leave comments anyway because they want conflict. They want to debate people. They want to mire down. They want an argument. This is the way that they interact with other people. This is their intimacy, right? And they go from one place to another, starting fights, picking fights, and get involved with these struggles, right? Like these perpetual struggles where both people hate each other, and they wallow in the negativity and the bad feeling that they create, right? So this is, a plague on the internet. They just want to wallow in conflict and drama that they create. And there's people all over the world that are doing this, and they just bring everybody fucking down because it's a low thing. It's a low thing. If you're creating multiple accounts just to, continue some sort of imaginary debate or conflict you're having with me or somebody else, like I don't even know. Like I don't know it's the same person, right? Like some person's probably left, there's people who've left 10, 15, 20 shitty comments, and I barely read the comments. Sometimes I respond to it, and sometimes I just ban the person. But they might come back in 2 months or something. They think about me and they're like pissed off, and they come back and leave a comment. And like, you don't even exist for me. Like, I don't even know. Like, it's just, you're not like, like I said, I have loved ones who hate me. Like I have people in my life who are telling me I'm a piece of shit, right? There's people who, whatever. And so there's all those things. And, like if you're doing this, so you're like stalking people and you're creating some imaginary villain in your mind and some kind of, imaginary relationship that doesn't exist, and you want a reaction or some kind of contact with me, and I'm clearly putting boundaries up, no, right? Like it's, again, you're not my audience. Like the audience here is people who want to spiritually evolve and are grateful for whatever, message that they receive from me in terms of all the things that I've said earlier. That's, that's my sole responsibility, is to deliver this message, and people can do with it what they want and what they can, because that's completely out of my control. Even to the extent of my kids, who I did as much as possible to create favorable circumstances so that they would evolve and develop, and they, and become better Abhyasis practitioners of the Seismic system. And they didn't, and they don't like me. And so that sucks. Like, it's a real bummer. I mean, so much of my life's energy went into that. And, you know, those things, personal people, with, you know, just disappointing results and whatever it is. And so I can't think about those things. You know, I've learned that it's just all, you know, a jumbled mess, and none of this stuff matters. And certainly my feelings don't matter. You know, that's why I don't have them. Like, I don't have disappointment. I don't attend to it. If I thought about it every day, I couldn't function. I don't think about it. Like, I've accepted it, and I'm grateful for whatever it is, and believing that there's a greater plan here, right? And the choices of other people are beyond my control. So I, you know, stick to whatever. You know, but I can't condemn this kind of behavior of dumping on other people, because you're just adding to the negative energy, right? It's just being, you know, when I talk about people here, I'm dispassionate about it because I don't care. I don't care if Don Lemon sucks, and I don't, you know, I wouldn't watch any of this stuff if I didn't have to produce content of the opposite side, if I didn't have to produce problem-based content. Again, if I could just talk about the solution, then I would just talk about the solution. Maybe I would, you know, do it a little bit less, you know, whatever it is, especially now that I'm in the habit of doing it. Now I've accepted it. It is what it is. It's just what I have to do. It's part of the job. Like, you have a job, it's part of the job, right? But in that, you know, all these comments, and the majority of commenters, you know, I've had millions of comments, so I can't even read them. Like, the more you have, the less that they are, you know, they make an impression on you. And there's a lot of wonderful comments, people expressing their gratitude, but the length of the comment, I just can't read them. I know people want me to read them, and they, you know, me reading the comment isn't really all that important. It's that you're able to express yourself, and like I said about critical thinking, especially if it's something positive. You know, it's much easier for them to express something negative than something positive. It's easier to tear people down than open themselves up and say something nice to somebody, to make themselves vulnerable and say, you know, positive things. I mean, you have somebody like Trump and Flim Flam Man and people who are, you know, buttering people up with false compliments. But I mean, when you actually express something to the heart, from your heart, and you're up and you express love and affection, admiration for people, and gratitude, you know, it's a risky thing, and people just don't want to do it. But in all that, just to wrap this up, it's like I'm getting tired. Like, you know, I was up early this morning, got to go eat breakfast. But in all that, you know, if you are expressing things, you know, dumping your hostility, you're failing yourself, right? You're failing everybody else, but mostly yourself. Like, you know, you're just creating this negative energy everywhere you go. And you have the ability to figure out what's wrong with you. Like, if you're opening up multiple accounts just to tell somebody they suck, and the person doesn't even know, it's like a continuation. I have no idea that if you've left multiple comments, unless you say I've left multiple comments, but I'm not even reading it, right? And I forgot about it like seconds after I've read it, because I've moved on to the next comment. And the things don't stick with me. If you're trying to make me feel bad, like, you're stalking. It's just stalking behaviors, and like total lack of responsibility of who you are as a person, right? Like, you're obsessed with something, a relationship that doesn't exist, right? You know, you know, for me, we all have personal lives. We all have people that are in our lives. And even in that, right, like your exes and your people that have done you wrong, and your parents who fucked you up, or, you know, you're mad at them or whatever, you know, clinging to these feelings and the negativity, it just is counterproductive. You're the one who's suffering. You make other people suffer because you're not a positive person. You're not, you know, you're just shedding, you know, putting out bad energy everywhere. And one final thing I want to say about this, you know, if I'm right about Trump, which I am, and you're a Trumper, for example, and you have all these people telling you how great Trump is, all these bullshit truthers, all these fake truthers, all these remedial truthers, and they're all bought into Trump, or they're saying he's the lesser of two evils, and they're telling you, you know, things that agree with your, you know, your whatever it is about Trump, right? And I tell you the truth about Trump. Like, I'm right and they're wrong. And you get mad at me because I'm telling you this guy is a scumbag and a flim-flam man. And, you know, I said some positive things about Trump in this video, but I see that he's coming down hard on the the Palestinians again because he's a piece of shit, and that Israel thing's a big deal. I'm going to cover that in my next video. But if I say what I'm saying about Trump and what I said about Trump is true, and he is taking advantage of you, and you're going down a path when you could be doing something to prepare for what's coming, right? You're wasting time and energy believing in some great pumpkin Santa Claus like Trump when you could be changing yourself and adapting to what's next, right? And so I'm doing you a service, even though you're mad at me or you're rejecting what I have to say, right? And so, whatever the truth is, criticism is, whatever it is, right? It's only, it's only a bad thing if it's not true, and it always can be seen as a good thing. It has value in the Sizemore system, right? So if I criticize Trumpers or flat earthers and I'm right, and you're believing something that's some kind of bullshit delusional thing, right? Then the truth, as much as it stings and as disrespectful as I could be in the presentation of it, you're getting something here that maybe you come back and 5 years ago you were right about that. I was such a butthurt little piece of shit about it. Sorry, but like I'm not going to remember you or your comment. It's between you and your and the divinity within you, right? Everyone's answerable to God at some point in their life for their behaviors, and so taking some responsibility. Be aware of what you're doing, naming what you're doing. Like I am aware that I mock people, and it's not a spiritual, a spiritual quality. And so how do I justify it? Well, like the internet sucks, and it's what I have to do to do this job that I'm doing. Like I'm not justifying the behavior. I'm not saying the behavior is good, but is there a reason why I'm doing it? Can I, justify doing it in terms of like just, the condition of the internet, right? Not rationalizing it, but seeing that I need certain defense mechanisms, and I, just in terms of getting through all this bullshit content and the negativity that I have to deal with, right? That I have to dive into every day. That's unnecessary for me because I'm over the whole fucking thing. I've accepted the as much best as I can that the only way to success here for us as a species is that the system ends, the system that's taken us in the wrong direction. Anyways, just a few things to add here. I got to wrap this up. Okay, so I ate breakfast, and I just did the Aubry Plaza Operation, whatever, the Fortune review that you heard earlier in the video. And I just want to add something. I started to fade out. Whenever I talk for an hour, I woke up a little early today, so I'm a little bit tired. So whenever I talk for a while, I always, fade at the end. And I want to have a better ending than I, presented there. And so, in my worldview, everything that you do, everything that happens in your life is there for your benefit, right? It's coming from God. Everything that you get, whatever. And there's no victims, which I said before. There's no one to blame but yourself. You've created whatever your present is, your present situation is created by your past. So whatever you did in your past, including past lives, whatever mistakes you made, whatever good things you did, whatever you were as a person, created what you are receiving now, the consequences of your actions, your thoughts, and all these things. This desire to blame people, and that's one of the things I moved away from early on, and more so over time, is this idea to blame the so-called controllers. People who are the worst, are the lowest. Maybe it's their second life, third life. They're just learning about power in the world, and or maybe they've lived many lives when they've fallen, higher developed souls that have fallen and can't retrieve their divine purpose. They've gone full demon or whatever it is, right? Yeah, they are contributing towards the shitty world. They're a big part of it, but they need willing accomplices, which we all are, right? And you can't be blaming them because they're not to blame. And when their time comes, they'll be erased. Their system will be taken down, and they will be removed from the equation. Unless they're doing God's work, and then they're fine, right? Then that's between them and God. But this idea to blame other people, whether it's your parents or society or some racial group or some guy on the internet, right? Some person on, celebrity for your miserable existence. If you're miserable, it's because you're miserable, and it's mostly because the biggest misery and loneliness comes from living your life and going in the wrong direction. And if you are going in the wrong direction, you're miserable, then you're lucky you're miserable. Because some people just embrace it and they shut down and they create walls to the pain of their, they ignore the warnings and they ignore the many opportunities they have to get back on track, and then they're just gone. And that includes the people in the top of the system, the people in the top of the pyramid, the so-called elite, and then all the other people. And so if you are feeling miserable with yourself, instead of blaming other people, figure out what you need to do to change, right? Figure out how you can evolve and what you could become. And, the internet's filled with people who are projecting their inner shit on other people because they can't take responsibility for their lives because they've been told that it's someone else is to blame. And there's plenty of, finger pointing and blame, going on, everywhere in the world of the media and the internet and all these things. Blaming Trump, blaming Biden, blaming the people who control them, blaming this group of people, blaming the immigrants, blaming that group of people. But the situation that we've created for ourselves individually and collectively, and the consequences that we're undergoing, are from our misguided and bad decisions and our mostly our lying to ourselves. Because it's not just our choices and our actions. It's not seeing the truth for what it is, right? All the things that I was saying. And for people who are here, that's like one of the principles. You have to just accept that you're responsible for your own life. And so don't try to pin your shit on me, right? I got my own stuff. Like, I got my own stuff to deal with. I have my own changes. Don't try to blame it on me, right? It's not, it's not going to end well because it's always going to come back to you. It's just going to, exacerbate the situation. It's going to be magnified and accelerated by engaging with like this, whatever that's going on here in this channel and with me and the system, is that, exposes these things that, when you meditate and you look within, you find like you're to blame, right? And I realized this right before I started the meditation. And I was in this liberal undergraduate school coming out of the hippie movement about social change. And, it encouraged critical thinking. The core of the program was they weren't going to give you the right answers, that you had to come up with the right answers yourself. And, I realized that I couldn't change other people. Like, we had to do these programs, these, outreach programs, community, some kind of community awareness programs. We had to develop our own. We developed one about getting the truth out about Columbus, because the Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of, the People's History of America, which is about telling the history from the point of view of the oppressed, right? And Christopher Columbus was a real piece of shit. And, I realized that when I was frustrated with the people that I was working with on the project because they weren't taking it seriously, and then just people in general I talked to, and, I started to exhibit some of the same characteristics as Christopher Columbus. Like, I realized, I am, I say that I hate this guy or dislike this guy, and I'm trying to raise awareness about him, and I'm behaving like he is, right? I just, like, some of the things I didn't like about him, I saw that were in myself. And I realized, hell, this isn't about changing other people or raising people's awareness about Columbus. It's about changing me. And like a couple weeks later, I started Sajmark. And I came back to this school with it. And I said, I found or this, whatever it was. And I couldn't wait to talk about it. And all of a sudden, my grades went from, it's my last semester, and they went from A's to B's. And apparently there was wrong answers, right, when they were trying to teach critical thinking. And the people there, the professors that liked me, and, I was good at whatever, expressing myself and these things. And they liked my answers. They liked my papers. I was doing well in the school. But then when I found a spiritual solution, all of a sudden, like, I had the wrong answer, right? But, this is how life works. And so when you realize you're the problem, which is very, it's taught over and over in the Sajmark system, that all you can do is change yourself. All you can control is what you're producing, what you're putting out to the world. And so that's why I don't tolerate all this bullshit blaming of people and, dumping on people and all these things. That's why I bring it up on my, not just in terms of the comment section, but, in terms of attitudes that are there. Like the Trumpers blaming the liberals and the Democrats. And, they suck. I'm not denying their suckiness. I talk about their suckiness. But they're not to blame for your sucky life or my failures or my flaws. Like, we're all responsible for our own personal suck. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing from the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.